Ladies and gentlemen, could not think of a better way to kick off the Saturday show. The Sports Report on Sportanarium in his weekly spot. One of the greatest players in Jacksonville State University, of course, a Hall of Famer. He went 32-4 and had a decorated stint in the Philadelphia Phillies organization where he was a member of 10 years with the Phillies and pitched in AAA for over 3 years and won 39 big games. And now he's the owner of the Relevant Sports Complex in the Craig Holman Baseball Academy. And he's quickly become one of the favorites here on Sportanarium. And without further ado, here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show, our number one pitcher and one of the greatest players all time in Jacksonville State University history and in the Philadelphia Phillies organization history, the legendary Craig Holman. My friend, how are you?
I'm fantastic. The weeks just continue to get better. When I think they can't get better, they do. So I look forward to speaking to you each week. But I'm doing well, brother. Any day that I'm walking around healthy, alive, I'm doing just fine.
Every day above ground is a good day. Has always long been my motto, my friend. And I feel like the weeks definitely have flown by. I almost equate them like going bowling, where it was when I would go bowling as a kid and into high school. Every week just would fly by. And it was like I would be so excited Saturday mornings to get ready to go bowling. And I kind of feel like that's when I'm ready to talk with Craig Holman. It's almost like Saturday mornings again. I'm getting ready to be on the bowling lanes and I'm getting ready to bowl near a 300 as always. And I'm getting ready to dominate. And I feel like I'm getting ready to dominate all the latest happenings in the world of baseball with the legendary Craig Holman, of course, who's done a phenomenal job with us here on Sportanarium, the number one global radio station. And Craig, I wanted to ask you this question here, especially for our worldwide audience here on Sportanarium. And there was some talk for a little while here on Twitter and across the rumorville in Major League Baseball that the owners and players were going to have to delay the season for a month due to the pandemic, and the owners had come out with a proposal related to that, but the players shot that down the other day. And I was curious on your perspective with everything going on right now with the pandemic and spring training. I wanted to get your perspective on if you thought it was the right call by owners to want to delay the season for a month, and players again vetoed that. I wanted to get your perspective on that for a worldwide audience here on Sportanarium, especially as somebody like yourself who's played the game and has been in the shoes of many of the players right now currently.
You know, when you hear stuff like that, first of all, you have to think, why? Why are you delaying it? Is the delay so the pandemic stuff gets deeper into it and the vaccinations, and all of a sudden they're going to go, hey, you can fill the stadium up? But it didn't really actually hear why they wanted to delay it. I know the players in the off season, you always got ready for a certain date. You work, you crank it up December, January, you're ready to go to spring training in February, you're ready to go. And then you hear news, hey, we're going to back it up. It just can kind of irritate a player. And not that I think it does damage to players, because you continue to do the same thing. I mean, if I'm throwing a bullpen every 2 days and every fourth day I kind of crank it up like a 2-inning outing, then I'm just going to continue to do that. If they said, hey, we're going to postpone it a month, then I would just continue to stay on my daily routine. But, you know, as far as postponing it, I don't know what the reason was or what it would be. I would like to see people get into the stadiums this spring and open it up to where you can get some people in the stands. And, you know, if you got to wear a mask while you're there, that's fine. But we need to open up this stuff. It's getting old. We know what we need to do. And I think they need to open up the sports arenas and let people go out and have fun, watch the games.
Absolutely. And a number of reasons why that the owners wanted to delay the season was a number of reasons, most of them due to the pandemic and a number of them related to obviously fans in the stands and revenue, because that's a big gripe among a number of owners, because as you alluded to, a lot of these places, especially here in the Northeast, like we are, Craig, nothing's opened up. They're not allowing fans, and they're only allowing a small number of fans, and they figure by delaying the season by, let's say, instead of late March, late April into early May, you have a better chance of more of those games to be able to attend fans, and also obviously with the risk of COVID going on. But I was also curious for you, Craig, as somebody, again, who's played the game and who's had a long career professionally, has been in those shoes. I mean, how far in advance do you need to know that you're going to get ready for your assignment and to report for spring training?
You know, I don't think it really matters. I don't. I know that probably is not the answer that most would expect. I started my routine. I took a couple months off. You know, a couple of years I went to Venezuela in the winter and pitched winter ball, but I always back and took 6 to 8 weeks off, rest. And then around late December, I start throwing. And then the whole month of January, I'm throwing on a daily basis. Every 2 days, I'm getting off the mound, flipping my stuff, working on the pitches. And then, you get into February, you get ready to go to spring training, but you're working. If someone called me up and said, hey, you got to be at spring training February 20th, and then said, we're going to back it up March 15th, I would continue to do the same thing. I would keep going to the gym. I would continue to do the throwing routine and gradually working it up to where, hey, now I got to report here. So I don't think it puts anything on a player to go, oh, you've completely damaged my routine and I don't know what to do now. That's easy to adapt to be honest with you. I think it's fine. I know there's some states that are treated differently with this coronavirus thing than others. Maybe some owners say, hey, my governor will not allow me to have fans. We saw it with the NFL. Tampa Bay played in Florida, Miami, they were allowed to have fans. Kansas City Chiefs, they were allowed to have fans. Buffalo, they didn't get fans to the playoffs. The Jets, the Eagles, the Steelers, all the Northeast with the Wolf, a Democratic governor. They
Don't get me started, Craig.
So,
Craig, do not get me started.
No, it's hard.
New York. Oh my God. Do not get me started.
It is. It's a sad, sad thing, but some teams get treated a little bit different. And we've got 2 teams in the Super Bowl who were able to play in front of fans all year. So
they had Republican governors. That's why.
They had Republican governors. Exactly. That's why they're in the Super Bowl.
And also, I thought what was interesting, and I wanted to get your perspective on this, is also, again, somebody who's played a long time and, again, who's been in those shoes. A couple of the other proposals Major League Baseball received from the owners was that they would shorten the season from 162 to 154 games. And another one of those proposals, which I'd be very fascinated on, because, again, you've probably played in a number of those, was that many teams would be required to play several doubleheaders throughout the season. And I would assume it would be, again, these 7-inning doubleheaders. And I was curious on your perspective on this past season. What was your thoughts on these 7-inning doubleheaders? I mean, how did you think of those? And was that something you saw also common in the minor leagues?
We played doubleheaders. I don't think we ever played any 7-inning doubleheaders. When we made up a game, we certainly played all 9. I'll be honest with you, if I would get a few days off in my schedule, I would be very happy to sit through doubleheaders. Because when you go to the park, to be honest with you, people have no idea. If the game is at 7:05, you got to be at the park at 3:30. You're there, you do early work, you stretch, you work out. Even pitchers have to be there and do stuff. And then you walk out of the clubhouse at 11:30. So you're there 8-9 hours a day anyway. To have a doubleheader, to be honest with you, have a complete off day, I would have loved that. And that's another thing most people did not realize when I first started dating which turned out to be my future wife. She kept saying, oh, yeah, I can't wait till an off day and we can go do stuff together. And I went, yeah, I got one in 30 days from now. So you don't have off days. You don't. You're never off. So it's rare. You may have 5 off days all summer. You play every day. And so I would be glad to take a few doubleheaders in there to get an off day.
Well, we're glad that these days you're not working 30 straight days like you were as a player. In many cases, out of those 6 months, almost the entire 6 months. And now you get to settle down and enjoy the simpler things in life. But I was also curious just on the thoughts of, let's say the season was delayed or the way things are going, especially when it comes to owners and what their decision process is. Let's say that there was a shorter season or a limited amount of time, let's say in spring training. I was curious on who do you think would have more an advantage in that particular case? Pitchers like yourself or hitters?
Without a question, the pitchers would have an advantage. Pitchers are taught to be ready, and I will take you back to this. In the 60s and the 70s and maybe even the 80s, players went to spring training to get in shape. They did other stuff in the off season in the 50s and the 60s. They had a job. They worked all year. Then they went to spring training, and that's why they had spring training. They got off maybe a shipping dock, went in, and they spent 4 weeks getting in shape for the season. In today's game, and probably it's been going on for the last 20 years at least, and even when I played, we were told in the off season, don't show up here to get in shape. Show up here in shape and ready to go. And then we will spend 4 weeks working on things. So players show up today ready to go. They have trainers, they have off-season workout routines, they have apps on their phone that they work out. My son did a Zoom call the other day with a major league team, and they said he would have an app on his phone phone that would calculate all his workouts. He would video himself, upload it. They'd be able to see everything in the off season. So the pitchers come in ready to rock and roll. Now, what I think happens with the position players is they take batting practice. And that's what they do. They throw, they get their arm in shape, but position players need to learn to hit, and they don't learn to hit. They get better at hitting in spring training by seeing live pitching. The local guy throwing a professional batting practice, he's not throwing 93, 94 on the black with a nasty slider. He's lobbing stuff in there and they're hitting it. So hitters need spring training to see pitches and to see 90 to 95 miles an hour. So definitely the pitchers would be way ahead of hitting.
When you were in spring training in the Phillies organization all those years throughout the 90s, when you went into spring training, did you always feel as if you were in better shape than some of your position player teammates?
Absolutely. I do. And I was a workout guy. I was a workaholic. Probably, I've had a few trainers say, yeah, you do too much. You got to give your body a break. But I think I came in great shape. And I think most of the guys did that. And I think as far as a physical weight room routine, most guys worked out, because if you didn't and you came in and you were behind, you got released. I mean, guys were afraid when they came in. And I saw a few teammates who had great seasons come into camp, 20 pounds heavy, throwing 5-6 mile an hour slower, couldn't even run the bases. And you go, oh my God, they haven't done it. And they release them. They had no problem saying, look, if you don't care enough about your career to come into camp in shape, ready to rock and roll, then we don't really want you in the organization. So most guys came in shape because they were concerned about their job if they were not in shape.
Were you ever told by coaches or anyone else in the Phillies organization that maybe you were doing too much, whether it was in the weight room or whether it was any type of training? Because again, you're still in phenomenal shape, and the shape that you were in, especially compared to your number of your teammates, especially position players, maybe you would have definitely, from the arm standpoint, they feel that hurts you. I mean, talk about if maybe some of your coaches in the Phillies organization ever said, hey, Craig, maybe you're doing too much. Maybe you have too much muscle. Maybe you need to be a little more leaner. You might hurt your arm in the long run. Did that ever come up as a topic of conversation?
Yeah, it did with me, and it did with many. There was a fine line back in those days of they didn't really want pitchers lifting. They did not. Now it's completely different today, and most are lifting weights and certainly heavy deadlifts and squats and back work, and but pitchers back then, they wanted your legs to be really big, and they wanted a lean upper body with a quick arm, but not a lot of back work, chest work, shoulder work. And once again, you're told to do this, but if you feel like, hey, a little bit of bench press helps me, certainly you're not going and bench pressing in front of them, but you're finding a weight room or doing some push-ups. I always just felt better when I was stronger up top. Now, we certainly had pitchers who squat and did sprints, and their legs were huge and never touched a weight up top other than the 5-pound Job exercises, as they call them, for your rotator cuff. So some guys in the 90s, people didn't know. And the 90s became a steroid era too, in the 94, 95, to where, the position players were getting massive and huge. And, you'd see your teammate come in spring training, 25 pounds heavier, ripped to shreds, hitting balls over the fence that he didn't do last year. And guys would say, well, I better start taking something. If I take it, I either take it or I'm going to get released. So that's how steroids kind of grew back then, because guys were afraid that if I don't do it, I'm going to lose my job. So you kind of were forced into doing that. And pitchers did it as well, no matter who or what they say. Pitchers also took steroids at times and for health purposes, not because you thought it would even help you throw harder. You just felt like it kind of helped you recover from working out in the off season. So a workout routine today, I think everyone's doing it. Everyone's lifting weights. Everyone's getting bigger and stronger. And if you're not going to be in professional sports today if you're not doing that.
See, I think the 90s was the first era where it was almost like it became in vogue to become a weightlifter or were to lift weights actively. If you think about, you mentioned the 50s, you mentioned the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, it started a little bit, obviously, and Jose Canseco is an example. But if you look at a lot of the big players, they were never what you looked at as like classic bodybuilders or let's say professional wrestlers. I remember, Craig, as a kid in the 90s, it was almost like a lot of baseball players became larger than life characters. They almost looked like professional wrestlers, whether it was Sammy Sosa, whether it was Mark McGuire. I mean, even Ken Griffey. Ken Griffey was still big and he was massive. Frank Thomas. I mean, if you look at all the players that were the stars of that era, to me, I almost looked at it like, well, they're taking steroids. I mean, look, I'm enjoying the game, right? I mean, obviously, you still got to go out there and pitch and throw. I don't look at it, and I'm not defending the use of steroids. I'm not defending anything that's illegal. But I always looked at it like you still got to pitch. You still got to go out there and hit. And everybody makes it seem like it's this magic potion. But I never felt it was that way. What I did enjoy was obviously the game and the memories that I got from all of your great teammates and many of the players that you played against or played with in the Phillies organization. So I look at it, to me, in a lot of ways that it's not as bad as people perceive it to be. And again, I'm not saying that anybody should take steroids. I'm not saying that anybody should do anything that could potentially give them side effects or harm later on. But again, we saw it in professional wrestling for many, many years. We've seen it in the NFL. And I always felt like, Craig, in a lot of ways that Major League Baseball and professional baseball got more of a bad rap than the other sports because it was actually happening in the NFL, for example, but much before it started to be in vogue with Major League Baseball.
Yeah, what you just said there, I've said 100 times, and I never understood it. Why Major League Baseball players got such a bad rap and the NFL players took it. I've even had people tell me a lot of NBA guys have taken steroids in the past to be able to play and run up and down the court day in and day out. So professional wrestling, I almost think you couldn't even have been a professional wrestler without steroids, to be honest with you. It's just, who wants to see a little skinny guy running around and throw somebody against the ropes? So it was a required thing. And you know what? I mean, let's be honest. Anybody out there that's in a weight room or had any type of dealings with anabolic steroids, they work. There's a reason they're illegal. There's a reason that they're not allowed. But I always tell people, Google Mr. Olympia. Just Google Mr. Olympia. I don't even know who won it this year. And then Google steroid-free bodybuilding champion. They look completely different. So anytime they have a steroid-free bodybuilding contest, they look like normal people that eat really good. So they work, they put on mass, they put on muscle. And I know golfers have taken them because there's a lot of wear and tear. And, there was rumors back in the day that Tiger was doing it and a lot of guys were hitting the ball a long way. But who knows? Once again, that we talked about that, about the Hall of Fame voting. There were so many guys that did that stuff back then that you don't know who did and who didn't. To be honest with you, I would almost assume that everybody did it rather than to assume that no one did it. So they worked. And when guys had some situations to get around a guy and say, look, I did it and it helped me do this. And this is what it did for me. And, I did it late in my career. I didn't do anything. I was in AAA and was just having problems, with my shoulder just not stable. And I actually took it to do rotator cuff work, and I felt like it helped. There was a lot of stuff, and guys would say, hey, you already try this, you can try that and make you feel better. But it was legal then to use it. It was legal to use it. No one was testing, and we felt like it would help. Creatine, everybody took creatine. So athletes are going to take stuff that they help, and today they test for it. You can't do it in college, can't do it in pro, and they kind of search for it.
Listen, Craig, in the 60s and 70s, they were doing something, and it wasn't steroids, but it might have been something worse. We had the Coke scandal for a long time in the late 70s with the Pirates and a number of other teams. I mean, Keith Hernandez was involved in that. I mean, marijuana. I mean, there's a lot of things that people take. So the way I look at it is like nobody is pure. Nobody is clean. At the end of the day, I don't care what you took, Craig, because you went out there and you did something that very few people can do. And whether you took it or not, to me, it doesn't matter because you still got to have the talent to be able to be a great player, which you were, and many of your teammates were. And that's why we feel like, Craig, Craig, we're taking performance enhancements when we get to talk with the legendary Craig Holman each and every week here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice. And for more information here on the Sports Report, you can go to sportsreportx.com and listen to all of our archives now on soundcloud.com/the Sports Report 2019. And you can also catch us now on YouTube, the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show. And as always, a huge shout out to the entire team here at Sportanarium, including Lakey, Arv, Danny, Dale, Sean, Steve, Sasha, Susie, everybody at Sportanarium that has made us now the #1 global sports show. And you can now check us out on Sportanarium's YouTube page, which you can find on YouTube to subscribe by @Sportanarium, where you can find over 47,000 people have now subscribed to the Sportanarium YouTube page. And you can also find the Sports Report now. Each and every week show you'll find there on YouTube, in case you don't check us out. Fridays, 5 to 7 Eastern time, 10 to 12 UK time. Saturdays, also 5 to 7, 10 to 12 UK time. And Sundays, the news report comes back from 5 to 7, 10 to 12 UK time. And you can always listen to us from Fridays to Sundays, 5 to 7, 10 to 12 UK time at www.sportanarium.com. And you can also follow Sportanarium on Twitter and Instagram at Sportanarium, and also like on Facebook at Sportanarium Media. And we are definitely liking each and every week talking with the legendary Craig Holman, a Hall of Famer with Jacksonville State University, won 32 games and won 39 games in the Philadelphia Phillies organization. Like I always say, ladies and gentlemen, I feel like I'm taking performance enhancements when I get to talk with the legendary Craig Holman each and every week. So whatever it is, creatine, androstenedione, whatever it is, I'm definitely taking it, because we are definitely feeling that adrenaline rush when we get to talk with the legendary Craig Holman, who had a decorated career in the Philadelphia Phillies organization and played with a who's who of players that went on to have successful careers, including soon-to-be Hall of Famer Scott Rowland. We definitely know that's going to happen. And also World Series champion, the legendary Gary Bennett, among a number of players who went on to have decorated careers. And Craig was also alongside them and did pretty good in his own right. And Craig, I was also curious for our worldwide audience here in Sportanarium, because it's something we've talked about on the show here for the past year, is that Major League Baseball and minor league baseball now have agreed to this realignment, where you have a number of different teams in cities that used to have teams that no longer have teams. For example, here in New York, we had the Staten Island Yankees, who were in the New York Penn League. They are no longer an affiliate. There's a number of different affiliates here. Also with the Mets organization, as an example, was the Columbia Fireflies, were an affiliate with the Mets. They were a single A affiliate. Now they are no longer with the Mets. They were with the Kansas City Royals organization. There is an affiliate. A number of teams. I know the Phillies have had a big reshuffling, your old organization. And I was curious what your thoughts were on this, as somebody who's played the game, and again, who's played every affiliate that there is, and wanted to get your perspective on the realignment that was agreed upon earlier in 2020 between Major League Baseball and minor league baseball.
Well, my statement on the decision was, anytime you're eliminating teams, you're eliminating jobs, and you're eliminating opportunity. There were a lot of guys who played in Martinsville, which was rookie league, Batavia, which was a A-ball, New York Penn League, kind of the mecca of the new drafted players. Martinsville was more of a high school. Rick Batalico went to Martinsville because he was drafted as a pitcher and played as a catcher 4 years of college. When you start taking off teams, that means those guys in the draft need to make a long season A team. And coming out of high school, sometimes that's very hard to do, because you're competing with 22, 23-year-old college kids. So I've been told that if my son is taken next year and he signs, goes into pro, he's going to be a higher round draft pick. But if he doesn't make a long season A, he will stay down in the Gulf Coast League or short season or extended spring training, to where they work with these kids. So they lose game opportunity. They're playing scrimmage games and things like that. But I'll be honest with you, outside of the development, which is a big hit, the development, I think it does hurt development. But what saddens me are those cities and small towns that had those minor league teams, and they're losing. That bothers me the most, because I'll be honest with you, I played in Batavia, New York, my first year. Right after I got drafted, I met some of the most wonderful people. They actually stayed with a family. The Faneras took me in. They would house some players and probably a week's pay of a guy making $30 million a year and pay everybody on the team. So it can't be money, but the development, I think, will be hindered by doing it.
Absolutely. I could not agree more with you. And as somebody now with the Sports Report alongside Ernest Ubb, who we're going to hear after we speak with you, who's covered the minor leagues extensively. And we've gotten the opportunity to interview a number of different players in the New York Mets organization. We've also interviewed a number of different players who had careers in the minor leagues. And anytime you're taking food off people's table, and anytime you're taking away the ability for fans to go out and watch a game, when you're cutting 40 teams, I mean, this is very significant. And Major League Baseball is drumming up this and saying it's great. They're window dressing it for sure. But to me, a number of different places, Hagerstown in Maryland, which always was an affiliate, whether it was the Nationals or the Orioles, Lexington, Kentucky, that's a very significant one. Obviously, here in New York with Staten Island with the Yankees. I mean, there's a number of places to me that I really think that this is a very significant blow. And it's also, I think, hurts a lot of guys in terms of jobs and opportunities. And that's always been important to the game, that you have these different affiliates. And I was also curious then, Craig, on your perspective, again, as somebody who's played in every affiliate, and especially in AA and AAA, who had a lot of success and was right there in terms of getting that call to be in the big leagues. How do you think the realignment here impacts the whole AA, AAA? Because if you always thought about AA and AAA, you always thought about, in a way, AA was really the next stop to the big leagues, because AAA was always like the in-between. It was a mix of veterans, guys who were signing 1 year minor league contracts or 1 year deals, who were maybe injured, started the season slow, and were there for a couple of weeks to maybe find their swing or make an adjustment to their pitch, or anybody else who isn't quite a prospect. But I always felt like AA was more the next rung to the big leagues. I mean, with the whole realignment here with Major League Baseball and minor league baseball, how do you think that this impacts the AA and AAA scenarios?
I think it's certainly going to push guys to go to the AA level when maybe they're not ready for it. I do believe that. If you have less A-ball clubs and you don't have the rookie leagues and the short seasons, and you got guys in A-ball and there becomes a log jam there, and you say, let's get this kid out of here to make room for another kid, let's bounce him to AA, maybe he's not ready. But I'll be honest with you, and I think we've had this conversation before, if you go to AA and you just look like you don't belong there, you're not going to be in the game long. Unless you're a high round draft pick and they give you a lot of money, then they'll probably swoop you up, send you back down to A-ball and let you get your confidence back. But you are right. When you get to AA, you start to see superstars in this game. And the game is quick. It's fast. I tell everybody, I live in a AA town now, Reading, Pennsylvania, and I tell them, go out to Reading and watch the baseball games, and you're seeing big league baseball. It's not defined, this is big league baseball. There's guys on that field, they're as good as big leaguers. They're very good, 23, 24 years old, throwing 95, 97 miles an hour. The hitters are good. The difference between those guys here and the guys in the big leagues, it's just they need some fine tuning. And I'll be honest with you, you got to learn how to be a big leaguer. And I preach that to my son now, is he wants to be in the big leagues by the time he's 21. And I tell him, then learn to be a big leaguer by 21. Because when you go to the big leagues up there, you go to AA, you go to AAA, and you don't look like you belong there, they know it. So you must prepare yourself where you want to go by understanding what you need to be when you get there. And I do a lot of motivational speaking and stuff. And I tell people, if you want a high level position, get up in the morning, put on a suit and tie, and go to work. Even if it doesn't require a tie at your work job, if you wear one around, sooner or later, the boss is going to say, man, he looks like he should be a boss. And so they make you a boss. But I've always been a big believer in that. You got to look the part. You got to feel the part. Every room I walked into after my career, I always wanted to feel like a big leaguer in that room, no matter what I was doing. And the development of kids in the minor leagues is very important. You have to develop, give them their confidence as they go up the ladder, to where when they get to the big leagues, they go, okay, I've had confidence at every level and I'm ready. And I think, once again, it's going to be done whether we like it or not. I think they're cutting these teams. They only want about 4 teams, but it's honestly going to make the teams make decisions quicker on the prospects, most certainly.
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. Anybody who's drafted, let's say, in the 6th round or less is going to have much more of an advantage over somebody, let's say, who's drafted in the 14th round or the 15th round. And obviously with the draft itself also, That's another issue, obviously, for another time. But I was also curious because you said something that was very interesting. And I want to ask your thoughts on it because obviously you had a lot of success. You lasted a long time professionally, and you brought up Luke, your son. And Luke, we know, is going to go on to do bigger and better things. And he's on the cusp of that. But compared to where you were, not in your talent, because we've talked about your talent, and Luke, we know, is going to have even more talent and more exposure than you had. But from a maturity standpoint, which we haven't got a chance to ask you on, how do you see Luke's maturity right now at his age versus your age when you were coming up?
His maturity is not the same as mine. I grew up differently, and I grew up in a broken home. My mom and dad divorced when I was 6 years old, I believe. I lived with my dad, single father. We bounced around a little bit, lived in a trailer park for a while, and not a nice one. We bounced around to a few apartment complexes, then ended up back in a house where I grew up. But so I grew up quick. By the time I was 12, 13 years old, I probably felt 18. And certainly at 18, I felt like a grown man. So very weathered, adult-like. I'd been through a lot of stuff. And so when I got drafted at 21, I went in and I was prepared for anything and was able to handle it. And my toughness was off the chart. Mental toughness as well as physical toughness was off the charts. My son, he's certainly tough. He's a big, strong kid, but he's never punched anybody in the mouth, as I say. And in Alabama growing up, we kind of fought a lot. So there comes with toughness. But I had a college recruiter tell me one time that he looks a lot for the kids with the single car garage rather than the 3-car garage. And I thought that was kind of entertaining. And I completely got it. And I told him that. And I said, 100%. I said, I grew up in Alabama with no garage. So we didn't have a garage. And then my son grows up, he has a 3-car garage. So, I've done okay, but these kids, they have to build their toughness through their weight room. But a lot of people that understand Luke's background, he had cancer when he was 8 years old and had chemotherapy for 12 months and battled lymphoma and went through a lot of stuff as a young child. And he was little. He was very little in Little League and up at 9, 10, 11 years old. And he had to work his ass off to be as good as some of the other big kids. And then all of a sudden at 13 or 14, he grew 6-8 inches, and now he's 6'5", 193, and throwing 94 miles an hour. So he developed his toughness in a different way, but he knows, his dad was just a tough. I was kind of a Rocky Balboa type guy. I'd still fight anybody and feel like I'd win. Now, I don't want my kids doing that, but they'll develop toughness a different way. But one thing is, no matter how tough you are or not, if you got nasty pitches, you get people out, and Luke certainly has that. So he's got some pitches right now at 18 years old, and I'd love to have had at the AAA level. So he'll do just fine.
Oh, I think he'll definitely do just fine. I've seen a number of his clips on YouTube, and I got a very good feeling about Luke. And listen, Craig, you still could punch people in the mouth because you are still a big man. You are still in very good shape. And that's why we always made that professional wrestling comparison with baseball players. But I say, Craig, you are still in very good shape, and we're very confident about Luke. And also, Craig, if it makes you feel better, I didn't have a single car garage till I was a senior in high school. So growing up in Brooklyn, we didn't know what a garage was. So until I was a senior in high school, when we moved to Staten Island, things got, I guess, a little bit better economically from that standpoint. But I can certainly sympathize with you on the single car garage point because we had no garage. So when you go from no garage to a 3-car garage,
nice.
But obviously, a huge shout out to Luke, and obviously we're very excited about him in the future, and we know that he's doing a great job, and he's learning from the best and the legendary Craig Holman. And Craig, before I get your closing thoughts here, and I gotta ask it to you because it's on the minds of everybody in the world. We've been asking everybody else here on the show, here on Sportanarium, and we know you're a huge football fan, and we kind of alluded to it very briefly here a little while ago when it came to the Bucks and Chiefs. And I gotta ask you then, the big game, Chiefs and Bucks, Super Bowl 55. Who do you like?
Well, I'm a gambler. Not only do I like watching, but I like to put money on the game as well. So I'm going to say that out there to people, very much so. But I will have money on the game. It makes the game a little bit more interesting when you put a little bit of money on it. But I would be betting on the Buccaneers and Tom Brady. I like parity. I know Kansas City won it last year. And, I don't know why. There's certainly the Chiefs are explosive. They're favored by 43. I do think that number will rise. I think there'll be a lot of money come in on Kansas City as we get close. So don't put your bet in now. If you're betting on a site, wait till Sunday. You'll probably get 3.5 or 4 with the Buccaneers. But I think it's been a year of the Tom Brady show. He left New England. He went down. He struggled in Tampa. Didn't look good. I'll be honest with you. His first 4 games, I even said he's washed up. He's done. I thought, man, he has nothing left in the tank. And I'll tell you what he did down there that was really nice to see is he became the leader of that team quickly, and they took on his image, and they don't ever think they're out of the game. The defense plays hard. They get turnovers, and it surrounds his aura. And I think they're going to play their ass off. It's the first time that a hosting team, the Super Bowl, actually is playing in the Super Bowl in history. So they're actually going to be a home team, which is pretty cool. But I think Kansas City is just so good. Mahomes is so good. But I think they're going to struggle. And I think the under's well above 50. I think you can't put a number that high. So anybody that bets the over-under, take the under. And you can do the Craig theory. If you take the under, you're always a winner until the very end. You're a loser if you have the under. To where if you bet the over, you're always a loser until the very end. So when you bet the under, you're winning from the beginning. So I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they win by 7-4. I think they win the game outright. And I think the score's 24-17, 27-20. I don't think it's going to be 35-30 or anything like that.
Well, Craig, interesting stat here is if Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl, he will have won more Super Bowls than any other franchise in the NFL. I mean, put that into perspective. Tom Brady himself, as an individual, if he wins, will have won more Super Bowls than any other NFL franchise. And he's 43 years old. I mean, put that into perspective. I mean, you were a great athlete, but he's 43, still playing at this level. In the NFL, there's very few athletes all time that have played at this level at the age of 43. I mean, we're talking about Doug Flutie and Vinny Testaverde, but they weren't in the level of Tom Brady. I mean, Darryl Green with the Redskins, but again, they weren't playing at this level. Jerry Rice was another example who was playing around 43, but they were not anywhere near the playing ability of Tom Brady. And if the Buccaneers win this game, it'll be only the second time the franchise has won. And Tom Brady has already won, if he'll have won more playoff games than any other Buccaneer quarterback in franchise history. And the Buccaneers have already won this year 3 road playoff games, which was more than the entire history of the franchise. And it had played 45 years. I mean, put that into perspective. If the Chiefs win here, Craig, it'll only have been the 9th time in NFL history a team will have repeated and won back-to-back. And I kind of think in a lot of ways, Craig, there's more pressure on Mahomes than Brady, because I think Mahomes kind of has to beat Brady here to solidify his legacy, even though I know he's only been in the league for such a short amount of time. But it's hard to bet against Brady here. It's hard to bet against him. He's been in these spots. It's like Michael Jordan. It's like LeBron. There's certain athletes that you put in here. And the game, Craig, that this reminds me of very similarly to in a lot of ways, and I know you were playing with the Phillies and you remember this game very well. It reminds me very similar to the Broncos-Packers Super Bowl of the 97 season going into 98. Brett Favre versus John Elway. Favre was the younger quarterback. Packers had won the year before. Packers had a team that had now been there for a few years. And Elway, we didn't know if this was his last run. It was a Broncos team that kind of surprised people to get in. They were a wild card that year, won 3 road playoff games. They went into Pittsburgh, Kansas City, very tough environments. So I think in a lot of ways, this matchup reminds me very similar to the Broncos and Packers. So I'll be certainly waiting to see what happens. And hopefully, Craig, you win some money here. And you win some money, and who knows, maybe you'll the ESPN radio or somewhere else, and you're talking with somebody else on there. And just remember us when you win the bet you'll have for this coming Super Bowl. And obviously cannot thank you enough for all that you do for us. But for you, my friend, I want to give you the floor. I want to give you any closing thoughts. As always, plug where our listeners can get in touch with you. Of course, your Twitter, Instagram, also anything related to the Relevant Sports Complex, the Craig Holman Baseball Academy, and everything everything else you're doing, the next parlor platform you're working on, which we hope is going to be up and running soon. And obviously, I can't thank you enough for all you do for us. You're an integral reason as to why we're the #1 global sports show. So I want to give you the floor. Anything you want to say, please do. Plug anything you want, including your social media, anything related to the Relevant Sports Complex and the Craig Holman Baseball Academy, and anything else related to your daughter and also your son. And I can't thank you enough, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, brother. Listen, I don't need to plug myself. I'm in the twilight of my years, but I will always each week try to plug others, and that's what I'm big about. But I will this week speak of Prep Baseball Report. I'll be flying out to Wisconsin Saturday with Luke. We're going out to Wisconsin. He's participating in the Super 60 event with Prep Baseball Report. It's the top 60 high school players in the country. And we'll be flying out. He'll be throwing in front of probably 150 scouts. Sunday. Actually, we'll be on Super Bowl Sunday, so we'll be flying back in the middle of the Super Bowl, which is disappointing, but it's something we got to go out and do. But so I'd like to plug Prep Baseball Report. They've done a great job. Certainly have put a lot of kids in college, and Greg Williams down here in Lancaster and his son Teddy Williams are incredible people. If you're out there, you got a kid, it's 13 to 16, thinks he wants to play college baseball, has some ability, locate the Prep Baseball Report in your state. And most every state has it now. I think they're 40, 45, but still shy a few states. But look them up, go get graded out, go to a camp there, do something, and they put you out in front of a lot of colleges. I know they've helped Luke a lot. So I'll plug Prep Baseball Report. We're heading out to Wisconsin. It's a huge honor to do this, to be one of the top 60 high school players in the country. And Luke gets a designed Mizuno glove and a full gear out there, so it'll be pretty cool. But you can find me on Facebook, Craig Holman 35, Twitter, Craig Holman 35, Instagram, same thing. Always open to answer questions and chat with people. But my buddy Thomas Brice is who I enjoy chatting with the most, and I look forward to talking with you again next week.
Absolutely. Amen to that. And everybody needs to follow the legendary Craig Holman on Twitter and Instagram at Craig Holman 35 and keep updated with all the great things. I know that Craig was also on a podcast not too long ago talking about his son Luke and everything else in minor league baseball and his career. And everybody can check that out on YouTube as well. So I want to make sure we give that a mention and a plug. And I actually got a chance to listen to that on YouTube not too long ago, Craig. So you're getting out there, Craig. The name is getting out there. And who knows, you might be like somebody else who came on the show. We won't say who it was last year. And he's become sort of a social media darling in the baseball world. He's definitely, all I'll say is you either she love him or she hate him. That's the hint I'll say for a worldwide audience. They probably know who he is, but we will obviously unacknowledge his personal name because he definitely is very polarizing. That's all we'll say. He's a very polarizing figure, but Craig Holman, definitely not a polarizing figure. And we are always honored to talk with him. We cannot wait to hear the report from how Luke does. We know Luke is going to do phenomenal things out there in Wisconsin. Safe travels out there. Hopefully the Cheese State treats you very well. And we cannot wait to talk with you about all the latest happenings in the world of professional baseball. And Luke, anything else on your mind? And also, we'll recap the Super Bowl with you last week and see if you won $1 million and see if you're on a trip maybe to the Tahiti or the Bahamas.
That's it.
So for you, my friend, I obviously cannot thank you enough. Safe travels, and we're looking forward to speaking with you next week.
Thank you, brother. I will talk to you soon.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show with the legendary Craig Holman, Hall of Famer with Jacksonville State University with the Gamecocks, where he was 32-4, a two-time national champion, and also had a decorated career in the Philadelphia Phillies organization, where he pitched 10 years, including winning 39 games. And we are here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice, and stay tuned for more hard-hitting analysis here on the Sports Report with the Honorable MC Ernest Stubb to cover all the latest happenings in the world of professional baseball, as we're here on Sportanarium, the #1 global radio station. We're at www.sportanarium.com. As I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice, and stay tuned for the Honorable MC Ernest Stubb. As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show with our #1 source for all the latest happenings in the world of professional baseball. And he's also an accredited member of the media who covers the St. Lucie Mets. And we're talking about none other than the Honorable MC Ernest Stubb. My friend, how are you?
I'm doing good, just not as good as Trevor Bauer.
Now, if you were his agent, I would say the Honorable MC and stuff, you were doing really good these days. But obviously, before we went on the air here on Sportanarium, and literally, ladies and gentlemen, it just happened not too long ago. And that Trevor Bauer, the man, I feel like the Honorable MC and stuff we've been talking about here pretty much for as long as we've been on Sportanarium, has finally signed with the team. But the Honorable MC and stuff, it's not with the New York Mets. So for a worldwide audience here on Sportanarium, break down the Trevor Bauer deal and who's the lucky team that won the Trevor Bauer sweepstakes.
Well, I guess it started out all well and good and fun, at least for Trevor Bauer and his own people, enjoying a nice Friday throughout the morning and early afternoon, even through the day before with his agent hinting it was down to 2 teams. And then comes Friday for hours at a time. It got to the point where Trevor Bauer apparently started posting things on his own website. He was having auctions and giveaways for a Mets hat, which sent Mets Twitter on fire. And then all of a sudden it was taken down, and here's one with a Dodgers hat. And then I believe just for good measure, at the end of the afternoon for Friday, he starts putting up an Angels hat, which they weren't even in anymore, but nobody knew, right? So he had some fun, decided to do what Trevor Bauer does, and wants to make it about his YouTube channel. So everyone had to sit and wait along for like that TV show to come along. And sure enough, finally the suspense had to end, I guess eventually before the season started. So looks like the grand prize, golden ticket raffle winner happens to be who else and who other than the actual defending World Series champions, the Los Angeles Dodgers. After all this, all of the drama, the suspense that he was creating for himself, or maybe he was trolling everybody online all day, ends up going to the best team in baseball, whose payroll now is just absolutely ridiculous. The team, it was something that was rumored a little bit early in the offseason. There was talk of the Dodgers being in on Bauer, but the thing was, they were saying we only wanted a short-term deal with him, and then more rumors started to float. It may or may not have been a situation as well. There's a theory, maybe not, doesn't even have to be a conspiracy, but Bauer's camp, could it be like a lot of free agents like Springer and everyone before them? They almost using the Mets for more and more leverage, because it seems like the Mets are now missing out on every top free agent in baseball. And here's the number one guy based on a lot of the rankings that they were making. So the top free agent in baseball seems to do the same thing. So he goes ahead and signs with the Dodgers. It ends up, officially and technically it's a 3-year deal, but it sounds like both the Mets and the Dodgers were offering 3-year deals with opt-outs after the first 2 seasons, which would basically be every year of the deal, really. I mean, the last one, you're already there at that point. So it's something that is probably also speaks to what Trevor Bauer was saying anyway, even before all of this, about when he was saying, I only really wanted to have 1-year deals regardless. And here we are. He technically has a 3-year deal, of course, for over $100 million. So obviously good for him. But the way it is being structured and some of the reports that were coming out late into the night now for Friday when it came out, he's going to be paid $40 million in his first year. And then he's going to be paid $45 million in the second year of this deal. And again, he has to opt in, right? Which I don't know. You have to be insane to opt out of the rest of the contract after the first year when you're looking at $45 million in the second. So let's go ahead and predict that it's going to end up definitely being a 2-year deal, which basically amounts to 85 of the millions already being used up in the first 2 years. So which puts his contract, if he returns for a third year, it would in the low 20s, which you could almost really not see that happening at all. But hey, officially it's a 3-year deal. Trevor Bauer to the Dodgers, who already have a monster team to begin with. Their rotation is now, it's going to be insane. They're going to have Bauer, Walker Buehler. Oh yeah, Clayton Kershaw, one of the best pitchers who's ever done this. Even still have Leo Urias in there. They even have David Price, who they've taken on his contract. And then, oh, by the way, the Dodgers, they even have farm system guys who've been getting their wet in the majors. So they even have the youngsters, Dustin May and even Tony Gonsolin, to even add to their depth at this point. For a team, by the way, again, who by far has the highest payroll in baseball, it's not even close. And even put more things into perspective, what Trevor Bauer just accomplished right now, even the way the contract is set up now from year to year, as it stands right now, before other teams fill their rosters, Trevor Bauer right now in the year 2021 is scheduled to make more money than the entire Baltimore Orioles, Pittsburgh Pirates, and Cleveland Indians Indians teams. This is what we're talking about right now. I mean, come on. And you mentioned this too. You mentioned this in prior shows as well, how certain issues with the Pirates and the Indians with their payrolls and then the Orioles. Well, right now, all three teams as a team, their entire rosters are going to make less money than Trevor Bauer. And the Miami Marlins technically are going to make a couple of $100,000 more as an entire team than Trevor Bauer in his first year of his contract. This is just something to behold. Or the second year. I'm sorry. Yes, they have a whole extra $5 million more they're right now paying their guys than Trevor Bauer will make in his first year. But to actually have three Major League Baseball teams right now scheduled to earn less money as a group than a player, it's fascinating. I just can't believe this was done. A lot of talk and theories and the hit pieces, and everyone has a lot of thoughts and opinions about Trevor Bauer and his agent. But hey, look what they just worked out. He's going to basically be the highest paid player in Major League Baseball for 2 years, this year and next year. That's amazing. For coming off in a great 11 start season, he now gets to be the highest paid player in the coming season as far as the salary for the year. That's amazing.
The Honorable MC and stuff, I'm laughing throughout when you're talking about these different teams that are actually going to have less payroll compared to Trevor Bauer's salary, but it's not funny because it's sad in a sense. But I'm curious then, the Honorable MC and stuff, and now that we know that the Mets lost out on another big fish, and obviously we had talked about quite a bit George Springer, if he was going to go to the Mets, and Trevor Bauer, and it was like the Mets were going to get them, and it was going to be great. The Mets were going to finally be what they haven't been in the past, but now then that leads me then, the Honorable MC and stuff, where do the Mets go from here?
That seems to be a really good question that Mets Twitter wants answered immediately because, and I know, listen, I have been a defender of the Mets for most of the winter. I know it. I guess I all of a sudden, they change ownership groups. Now I'm a homer. It came out of nowhere. But the question now is, again, what do the Mets do? Because as soon as the offseason started, it seemed like pretty much out of nowhere, within like seconds, they signed a reliever, a really good reliever in Trevor May. So they locked up a reliever very fast. And then there were the rumors. And again, the Mets might have been used all offseason by free agents. So there was the Real Muto situation. And did he work out certain things for the higher monies elsewhere? He wanted to wait out the market. The Mets didn't reportedly want to keep waiting at the catcher position. So it seems like right from the beginning of the offseason, the Mets wanted to deal with certain priorities. They came up with the catcher priority. They did not want to wait on Real Muto for months. So they just jumped on the opportunity to probably and likely outbid everyone for McCann. And then they locked up a reliever very, very quickly. But then what has happened since? That's what's been confusing everyone. Even though it seems like everyone keeps forgetting they made an absolute monster trade, acquiring Lindor and Carrasco, getting another big arm for the rotation and one of the best players in Major League Baseball. But the counter argument remains. Here we are getting towards the start of spring training. Of course, hopefully, we really wanted to start at this point. But we're getting closer to spring training, and the Mets have acquired a superstar, technically on the last year of his deal in Lindor. And then a catcher who was not as good, and then a reliever where other fans can come up with a lot of other relievers who were better. So the question now is, has this always been a good move all along with the Mets? Because they definitely have added a lot of depth. The entire winter, they've been adding depth. They have most depth that I've known of for years. As far as just the overall roster from 40-man, even going down into AAA right now, if you start looking at things like the AAA roster and the rotation, the Mets in AAA, it's probably not going to be amazing to a lot of fans out there, especially if you're not Mets fans, but they've got talent. They're going to have more experience and talent, but when you keep missing out on all these free agents, now everyone is asking, is this what we wanted? Who else are we even fighting for at this point? But again, this all started because of the hype from the beginning about Cohen. That's why even the rumors, all the writers, the national writers, reporters, they were all speculating, predicting the Mets would sign at least 2 of these 3 guys or 3 of these 5. And then the problem is, here we are about to head to spring training, and not one of those players was acquired by the Mets, and they haven't signed any of them. Their one superstar was acquired via trade, and he's on the final year of his deal. So until he gets an extension, that's what's frustrating a lot of fans right now.
But I would say you can look at it the other way and say, well, they did bring in, as you mentioned, Lindor and Carrasco. You have Stroman back for another year. So in a sense, yeah, Springer and Bauer, but but should the expectations then have been maybe watered down a little bit in the fact that the Mets were maybe always never going to get one, if not both, when it came to Springer and Bauer?
Which is something I've kind of been saying a lot as well, as far as the Mets want to have a plan here. Obviously, that's the point of all this, right? And you want to have a long-term plan. Cohen said it in all of his original press conferences. Sandy Alderson has been saying it. They want consistent, sustained winners. And when you have some of these players who a lot of us would have wanted here and there, but again, Springer already on the other side of 30. The man gets 6 years already. Some of these contracts. Now the Bauer thing, again, now we know it's different, right? Going to basically play season to season, or at least for the first 2 seasons. But again, that's still tough. You want to pay a guy right now. You buy the team, you're now the owner, you take over, and you want to make a guy coming off 11 starts the highest paid player in Major League Baseball. So that would be a lot. But for some of the other guys, congrats to them. They took a lot of monster deals. And I know Sandy, in his history, he hasn't really seemed to be too excited and known for signing guys on the other side of 30 to multi-year contracts. So, but that would just sound like me defending the Mets. So I have to be careful there. It's just, how do you group up a real, true, and new sustained winner? Because now here I am saying, hey, you don't want to be bogged down with too many contracts. But then on the same token, all of a sudden, well, it's like, hey, when are you going to extend Michael Conforto and Francisco Lindor? So it's just, that's what this whole thing has come down to. There's also the situation about the offense. I've been mentioning about this for weeks now, even on social media, that the Mets, by the way, in case anyone forgot, they had one of the top offenses in baseball in 2020. The reason why they didn't go anywhere is because they didn't have enough pitching. They had Rick Porcello starting 12 of the 60 games during the season. So there was no Syndergaard. There was no Stroman. Carrasco wasn't on the team. So you're adding in like 3 guys who can be elite pitchers. And Noah's going to be coming off the surgery. And again, Stroman, everyone can talk all day about his personality, his Twitter accounts for a different reason than Bauer. It's just whatever you want to say about him. He's a really solid pitcher who didn't pitch last year. We get it. He opted out. I know. He's all motivated this year, and he's going to be on the final year of his deal when he signed the qualifying offer. So he's going to be motivated to earn his next contract. Carrasco is now under contract for the Mets, and he's always been a solid pitcher. They still have a really good team, and I could predict them right now. They have to be playoff contenders. And again, the Dodgers did what they did, but you know what? They don't play in the same division as the Mets. So let's worry about the other teams in your division. You still have one of the top offenses in baseball, and then you just basically added 3 pitchers to your rotation. So let's see how it is. Let's see if there's enough depth in the Mets, but we don't know what else they're going to do. Do they even want to spend big time money anymore? Because again, they actually offered more reportedly than the Dodgers. So if we're saying the Mets basically were going to pay him $105 million guaranteed based on opt-ins, where is that $105 million going next? Is it going to Jackie Bradley Jr.? Is it going to some other people we haven't thought about? I know there was some information and some rumors floating around about the Mets and the Reds possibly being trade partners, because the Reds, they have Sonny Gray, who's been having a really good resurgence to his pitching career, and they also have a third baseman, Eugenio Suarez. So could the Mets now have to keep having their backup plans? They acquired Lindor. I believe Sandy Alderson in some press conferences after, they had talked about some of these things being in the work. And that's why they had to play the waiting game. So now, losing on Bauer, do you just go ahead and out and acquire depth through free agency? Or do you try to hit up the Reds now? Or do you try to find any other teams right now trying to maybe sell off a few guys? Or, I mean, is that another way where the Mets can add on some really top-notch players with higher salaries? It's still hard to argue how many other people are out there at the positions of needs for the Mets.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know one thing. Stay tuned. Same bat time, same bat channel, because I got a feeling we're going to be talking about a lot more of this here in the next coming weeks with our number one source for all the latest happenings in the world of professional baseball, and that's the Honorable MC Ernest Dove, as we're here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice. And for more information on the Sports Report, as always, you can go to sportsreportx.com and listen to all of our archives with myself and the Honorable MC Ernest Dove, and also last week's guest, Marcel Renteria. You can go to soundcloud.com/the Sports Report 2019. You can also now check us out on YouTube at the Sports Report, the number one Global Sports Show for our YouTube page. You can definitely subscribe and listen to all different content from myself and the rest of the team, including the Honorable MC Ernest Stubb. And also, you can now check us out in the Sportanarium's YouTube page, which you can do that by liking and following Sportanarium and subscribing to their page, which has over 47,500 subscribers now. So it was just yesterday that they had only 45,000 subscribers. 2,500 subscribers since we've now come on to Sportanarium. And as always, a huge shout out to the entire team here at Sportanarium, including Lakey, Arv, Danny, Dale, Sean, Steve, Susie, Dave, Chris, Randolph, everybody at Sportanarium that has made us the #1 global sports show. And of course, you can follow Sportanarium on Twitter, Instagram, and you can also subscribe to the aforementioned YouTube page of Sportanarium. You can do all of that by going to @Sportanarium to Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And you can also like Sportanarium on Facebook at Sportanarium Media. And most importantly, you can check the sports report out Fridays, 5 to 7 Eastern Time, 10 to 12 UK time. Saturdays, 5 to 7, 10 to 12 UK time. And Sundays, the news report comes back 5 to 7, 10 to 12 UK time. And you can always do that by going to www.sportanarium.com. That's www.sportanarium.com. And as always, want to give a huge shout out to maxmets.blogspot.com. That's maxmets.blogspot.com, the #1 source for all the latest happenings when it comes to the world of the New York Mets organization. I get all my news, all my information related to the Mets, of course, from Max Mets. And as always, everybody needs to follow John from Albany on Twitter at John from Albany, and cannot thank enough Max Mets as they get to list the sports report when we come on the air each week. So every time you go on to maxmets.blogspot.com on Saturdays, you'll always see the link to Sportanarium for when the Honorable MC Ernest Stubb comes on, and also alongside Craig Holman, who comes on always before the Honorable MC Ernest Stubb. So it was always an honor to hear from Craig Holman. We got to talk a little bit about minor league baseball with Craig Holman in terms of his thoughts on the realignment for Major League Baseball and minor league baseball. So I want to give a huge shout out to Craig Holman, also his son Luke Holman, who I got a feeling the Honorable MC Ernest Stubb is going to be covering very, very soon. And we are here on the Sports Report talking all things related to the huge deal between the Los Angeles Dodgers and Trevor Bauer, a 3-year deal worth $102 million. And of course, opt-outs the first and the second year of the deal. And we're doing that, of course, alongside the Honorable MC Ernest Stubb, who's been with us for most of the 2 years we've been on the air. But the Honorable MC Ernest Stubb, I was also curious for our worldwide audience here in Sportanarium if there was some other transactions our worldwide audience should keep an eye on as we're getting closer now to the start of the Major League Baseball season.
Well, yeah, apparently other teams wanted to at least try some news in the last week outside of Trevor Bauer by himself. And then even, later in Friday evenings, very quietly, once Bauer in the whole social media completely blew up, but Marcell Ozuna has reportedly signed back with the Braves for 4 years. Jeff Passan was one of the reporters who was putting out a lot of the details on a 4-year deal for about $65 million and even an option year that can take it all the way to 80. Now, he's a guy who's really coming off some monster seasons again, showing off a lot of power. I believe some of the things with Ozuna was the defense was really good, but now there are concerns about will he be one of those guys who would be more of a DH type guy as well. And again, we've been joking about it. The universal DH is not showing up yet still, but the Braves are going to go ahead and make the deal anyway. So that's good, because even that can affect a lot of other free agents. Even the Twins in the last week signed back Nelson Cruz, who seems to never get old at this point. So they bring him back into the fold for a 1-year deal where he'll more can be the DH role. Maybe hard to say what could have been for him if the National League actually had a DH already set up, but he makes the decision to go back to the Twins. The Brewers signed second baseman Colton Wong to a 2-year deal with a club option for a 3rd year. This is a really good signing for the Brewers, who all the way, they do have Castanera, who was one of their top draft picks a few years ago. He's one of those bat first type guys who kind of burst onto the scene even at the major league level. Struggled a little bit somewhat during that weird, quirky 2020 season. And now there were some reports that maybe he moves to first base. So another good sign then for the Brewers, because again, he was more of a bat first type of guy. And now the Brewers, the second baseman, Colton Wong, is one of the best guys to do it over at that position. So it's a really good move for the Brewers, shoring up the defense. Moving Hero to first might be a good option for him anyway going forward, even before that happened. And also the Cardinals. We never really know if the Cardinals have money, but then we don't really know, right? They acquire Nolan Arenado, which seemed to come out of nowhere. But then they end up trading Dexter Fowler to the Angels. The Angels, of course, apparently, like the Mets, they seem to have been bowed out to Bauer a few weeks ago based on reports. So they seem to be at least trying their best to shore up in other areas, picking up an outfielder, which is kind of interesting for the Angels as well. They have Joe Adell, one of their top rated prospects for a couple of years now. Kind of interesting what happens to him, at least for 1 year, as they take on Dexter Fowler and his contract. So there's been some moves and shaking going on right here. So there are some things happening. And even for the Mets, I don't know, new rumors. You and I have been talking about a lot of the starters trying to resurrect their careers. Andy Martino, who's known a lot in Mets Twitter for good and bad reasons, I guess. He's been putting out some of his latest information saying maybe the Mets have some interest now in Jake Arrieta. Again, he's one of those former top pitchers who's been struggling for a couple of years now. So that would be a really fascinating backup plan if they were to pick up a guy like Arrieta or another starter of his current caliber. I don't know what the reactions would be from Mets Twitter if they go that route to even sign even other guys. Are they going to sign a guy for some minor league deal with major league invite? But just, at least other teams, they should still try, correct? Even with the Dodgers and the Padres still playing baseball this year. But I think the other teams are going to go ahead and give it a shot. So, hey, good for them for signing a few guys.
Listen, the Honorable MC and stuff, I'm just glad that Trevor Bauer didn't go to the Phillies or didn't go to the Braves, because then we'd have to hear about him throughout the entire year. We'd have to face him at least 4, if not 5 times. And I'm sure he would win 4-0, 5-0 with a 1 ERA and straight out like 50 batters of ours. And all we would have to do is hear about that for the next 2 or 3 years. So I'm happy, if anything, he at least went to the National League West, so we don't have to deal with him much. And Arrieta, to me, it's almost like Porcello. I mean, it's another guy, yeah, he's got a great track record. His baseball card looks good, but remember with the Phillies, and he struggled to say the least. So I don't know about Arrieta. Arrieta, I got mixed feelings for. If it's one of these 1-year deals, take a shot on him, see what happens. I mean, the Mets have had some luck with that before in the past, so I'll say that. But Arrieta, to me, I think we've been there, done that, but we'll see what happens, and obviously we'll cover all that. But before we get your closing thoughts here, and speaking of the Mets, and we got to mention it because obviously we had him on the show last week. And Marcell Renteria, we've been talking about quite a bit. And the Honorable MC and stuff, it looks like now finally we're not the only ones that have been praising Marcell Renteria. But now it's Baseball America that's praising Marcell Renteria in something we've been talking about for a long time. And that he has been long one of the top prospects in the Mets organization. And this is vindication, I think, for Marcell and his journey and how far he's come. And that's why we know we're going to see him as a New York Met very soon, and a huge congratulations to him. And the Honorable MC and stuff, talk about Baseball America and this article and how they rank team prospects and how well Marcell did.
Well, I mean, hey, maybe perhaps we have some additional listeners that we didn't know about on the Sports Report on Sportanarium. Because now all of a sudden, Marcell Renteria, for the first time since he was drafted by the Mets organization, he pops up in one of their top 30 lists from a publication, which Baseball America is one of the biggest ones out there. And they have him ranked 23rd out of the, basically ranking all teams. So they have him now ranked as one of the top 30 Mets prospects. So that's his first time being listed, from a lot of different publications. And, maybe it's because of our show and knowing and actually seeing the work that he's been putting in for the last year, even during the lost season. So congrats to Marcell for having this. It is an honor to start being ranked. I mean, these things are always hard to do. They can be very weird. You're ranking professional athletes going for their dreams. But I'm sure it's an exciting time for him. It's really good exposure for him, and he's earned it. And I've been talking about this forever. Long before the interviews, we were already talking about some of the progresses he was making. Then we get to have him on the show, and then from the show, he's a guy you want to root for. So that's why I'm really excited to see him being on the list. We could always argue different points and rankings and everything else. I could have some debates about who should have been higher or lower, but I just think it's really cool that Marcell Renteria is on the rankings. And again, it's been my opinion for a year now during the lost season. I really wouldn't be shocked, even with all the depth that the Mets have been signing all winter, trying to really shore up the upper minors and the major league arms. I wouldn't be shocked if he makes a debut as soon as 2021.
Ladies and gentlemen, a rising tide lifts all boats. And Marcel Renneria is going to be that rising tide. And his hard work has paid off. And now all of baseball is paying attention. And Baseball America is the Bible for so many people in this game that follow it. And Marcel's journey is picking up steam. It's gaining momentum. And that's why we have a very good feeling that now we're not the only ones that have been paying attention and have been highlighting Marcel and all the great things that he is doing. So a huge congratulations to Marcel. A huge congratulations to his wonderful family, including his mother, his cousin, everybody that has been behind him. And he is definitely somebody that you are going to see a lot more from, and you are going to see in a New York Mets uniform very soon. And for you, my friend, I want to give you the floor. I want to give any closing thoughts. As always, plug where listeners can get in touch with you. And I cannot thank you enough for all that you do for us, as you're an integral reason as to why we're the #1 global sports show. So you know the drill, my friend. Plug where listeners can get in touch with you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. As always, you can catch me on Twitter at Ernest Dove, ERNESTDOVE. And as far as additional shout outs, hey, let's go back to the land down under for the Sydney Blue Sox and give a shout out to some of the Mets prospects, since the whole show is all about the Mets in this segment. Shout out to some of the Mets prospects who've been doing really well and succeeding down there in the Australian Baseball League. Manny Rodriguez, who's one of the friends of the show, he's been starting to catch fire lately in the last few games. He seems to have made certain adjustments, and they had that big break in between not being able to play for COVID reasons. And then since the return, Manny Rodriguez has been on fire. And then Carlos Cortez has just been on fire since the season started. So shout out to Carlos Cortez. I've had as one of the top prospects in the Mets organization for a couple of years now. He's almost hitting 400 still at this point in the league. And then even Andrew Mitchell, guy that you and I also know from the Sports Report, he's been off to a good start as a reliever. So shout out to all the Mets prospects putting in work in the Australian Baseball League. And shout out to us on the Sports Report, continuing to put in the work as well every week, trying to give you all the information and opinions and insight that we can every week on Sportanarium.com. And I can't wait. I mean, we're hoping, right? We're hoping there's going to be a season on time, because spring training is upon us. It's almost here. So hopefully it can actually happen.
It will definitely happen one way or another, and a rising tide lifts all boats. And the Honorable MC Ernest Dove is also a rising tide that is going to lift us. And let your hearts not be troubled. We will definitely have baseball. But most importantly, we're hoping for some minor league baseball. I mean, Major League Baseball is great. Yes, we want to see that. But it's been so long since we got to see our minor leaguers. So I kind of want to see some minor league baseball, maybe more so than I want to see some Major League Baseball. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, but we'll definitely keep everybody up to date here on the Sports Report, here on Sportanarium, the #1 global radio station. So a huge shout out always to everybody here on Sportanarium. And for you, my friend, I cannot thank you enough as always, and looking forward to speaking with you next week. And we're 1 week closer to spring training, and we'll talk about it with you next week.
Sounds good to me.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show with our #1 source for all the latest happenings in the world of professional baseball, and that's the Honorable MC Ernest Dove, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice. And stay tuned for more hard-hitting analysis here on the Sports Report with our own Rob Maraska, our longest tenured analyst, to talk all the latest happenings in the world of Major League Baseball, as we are here on Sportanarium, the #1 global radio station. We're at www.sportanarium.com, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice. And stay tuned for Rob Maraska to talk all the latest happenings in the world of the past, present, and future of Major League Baseball. As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show with our longest tenured analyst and our #1 analyst for all the latest happenings in the world of Major League Baseball, and that's our own Rob Maraska. My friend, how are you?
Hey, Tom. Good to be here with you tonight.
Always good to talk with you, my friend. And as always, there is a lot to talk about once again when it comes to all the latest happenings in the world of Major League Baseball. And Mr. Maraska, there is a lot to talk about, more so off the field than on the field with you this week. And boy, it seems like the name Mickey Callaway. I mean, I almost forgot about that, Mr. Maraska, the name Mickey Callaway. But Mr. Maraska, for our worldwide audience listening here on Sportanarium, why are we talking about Mickey Callaway?
Well, here we go again. Another involvement with the Mets and some lewd behavior. Mickey Callaway, ex-Met manager, is accused of lewd behavior. Well, he was the Mets manager, of course, by 5 women. I mean, this is crazy. The past couple of weeks, with people associated with the Mets and these lewd behavior. It's crazy. What's going on? I mean, he's now he's suspended, pitching coach of the California Angels. Once this came out, they suspended him. And, I have to think that he's going to lose his job.
Lose his job? That's an understatement. I mean, who knows what else Mickey Callaway is going to lose. But I'm curious about this, Mr. Maraska, because we covered Mickey Callaway quite a bit in his tenure as Mets manager. And obviously we know that there's a new owner when it comes to Steve Cohen. But I got to think, though, when it comes to this case versus the Jared Porter incident where he resigned as Mets general manager a few weeks back, and we covered that on the show with you. I got to think, though, in this particular incident, do the Wilpons have any blame here in this, your opinion?
Yeah, well, of course, the Wilpons are they have some blame because they hired Mickey Callaway, and we don't know what they knew about him, if they looked into this. Let's face it, all right? Baseball has been this way forever, and now it's the Me Too movement. So things that used to happen all the time are now under a microscope. So if somebody's accused of something, and if they're doing it, and if they're doing it to more than one person, everyone's coming out of the woodwork. But you know what? Mickey Callaway, his behavior was really, really bad because he actually told a reporter that if she got drunk with him, he'd share info about the Mets. Okay, what info was he going to give her about the Mets? What was he going to say about the Mets?
I don't know if all that info would have been good.
I know, and he was another one who was sending X-rated pictures of himself to these women by text, texting women who did not want him to text them. I mean, what's going on? He's a married man with 2 kids, and this is just craziness. And now he's caught, and it's Me Too once again. The California Angels, they have to get rid of him. Jared Porter was fired right away, immediately by the Mets. And I think Mickey Callaway's probably going to go too.
But here's my question here, because you've been involved in the sport. Your father played, and obviously you interviewed and covered a lot of different athletes, especially in dugouts and clubhouses. Met management, Met front office, Met ownership had to know that this was going on. I mean, somebody didn't know. I mean, why weren't they tipped off? And it's almost to me as if the Mets allowed that environment and allowed Mickey Callaway to be the Mets version of Anthony Weiner.
Well, are we ever shocked when we hear that some of this stuff happened during the time the Wilpons owned the Mets? Because let's face it, we're going to go way back in time. The Mets have had some wild teams under ownership. That ownership, the 86 Mets, one of my favorite all-time teams, one of the greatest teams of all times, but they were out of control too. And it's just been going on. And you always hear these things about Met players doing stuff like Vince Coleman with the water gun and all this other stuff. So I'm not shocked at all, especially, with baseball players. We know this has been going on forever. And now, you can't get away with this stuff anymore. So I'm not shocked that this happened under Wilpon's ownership.
Is this the tip of the iceberg?
Well, you know what? I got to believe a lot of things are going to come out. I mean, it may be a couple of years ago we had in the entertainment field where this started, Bill Cosby, Matt Lauer, all this stuff going on and everybody coming out of the woodwork. So it could be the tip of the iceberg. Don't know what's coming. But like I said, these guys, they're out on the road and I guess they just can't control themselves. You have a wife, 2 kids. But here's my question for you. Are they this stupid? Don't they learn from what's going on with other guys? Don't send these texts. Don't send pictures of your junk or whatever pictures you're sending, because there is the evidence right there. What is wrong with you?
I think what it comes down to, and I've seen this a lot in politics, obviously with Anthony Weiner, Elliot Spitzer, Michael Grimm, who was our congressman. And what happens is you get into a position of power and you're able to use that and abuse it. And we've seen that now with Jared Porter. And now we've seen that with Mickey Callaway. And I think that that's what it comes down to here, Mr. Maraska, is that there's a mindset when it comes to these different personnel, these different types of players, or certainly in these cases, management and front office personnel, that they can get away with this. And that's why I think in a lot of ways, I'm blaming Met leadership. I'm blaming the front office. I'm blaming ownership because they had to know that this was going on. And the other thing I got to ask you then, when it comes to the reporter side of it, why do you think that this came out now versus, let's say, after Mickey Callaway was let go as manager of the Mets?
Well, a lot of times they're scared it's going to hurt their career. But let me say one thing. You know what? He's been accused of this. He has not been found guilty. That's another thing that bothers me. You know, these guys are getting accused of things and, you know, they haven't had their day in courts. They're being accused and then all of a sudden they're being fired, suspended. At least give them their day in court because we don't know. We haven't seen the pictures. We haven't seen the text. So right now, we really can't say, okay, he's guilty of it. He's accused of it. Yes. That's another thing today. Everybody jumps the gun and people do not get their day in court until after the fact. You know, it used to be, all right, the guy's going to keep his job and then have his day in court. And if he's guilty, then he'll lose his job. Now they just get rid of you right away. I mean, it's a catch-22. The team probably has to get rid of you. I don't know. He's suspended. Porter was fired. Porter did admit to it. So that's another reason why he was fired right away. I don't know if Callaway's going to admit to it, but until he does, I think they probably could just suspend him. I don't know if they're going to fire him.
Well, Callaway was very defiant when it came to his decisions as Met manager. So on the field, I have no love for Mickey Callaway in terms of how he handled the bullpen, how he handled his team. So from an on-the-field standpoint, to me, good riddance when it comes to Mickey Callaway in the state of baseball. He was supposed to be this pitching guru, and we didn't quite have the success, certainly with the bullpen, when it came to pitching. But when it comes to Callaway, I got to think, though, after hearing you speak, Mr. Maraska, there's one difference when it came to 20 years ago and 30 years ago as to why now we want to convict everybody before they get their day in court or their ability to speak out. It's because 20 years ago, 30 years ago, very simply, there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was no social media.
Exactly. And you're definitely right about that. Social media has really brought this stuff to light. And it's just like lightning fast things are happening. You know, it's out there and then millions of people have that information instantly. So yeah, you're definitely right. Social media was not around back then. It took a while. And usually the reporters, the beat reporters who were covering the team, they usually kept their mouths shut because first of all, they were friends with the players, most of the players. We know there were some players that they couldn't stand, but you know, they had a code of ethics. They did not rat on these players. So that's one of the things. You're definitely right. Social media has a hand in this.
So what do you think happens going forward here now when it comes to female reporters and managers, GMs, or even players? Do you think that we see a different relationship or a different rapport now with female reporters covering the game between players, management, and coaches or anyone else?
Well, they're probably going to have this stuff, and they might already have it because, you know, a lot of businesses have it where they have to take these sexual sensitivity classes and all that stuff. Who knows? Major League Baseball already does that stuff, but, you know, that's one thing. And these players just have to start using their brains. Don't text stuff. Don't abuse women. Don't send pictures of yourself naked. If they don't want you to text them, don't text. Don't send them like 50 texts, you know, and they don't answer you. But, you know, really, you're a stalker then. So this stuff's got to stop. But men will be men, like I said. They're on the road all the time. And COVID, I guess, has calmed that stuff down. But once things are back to normal, they're on the road. You know, they get lonely. You know, they get some alcohol, and you never know what happens. But you know what? If you're married with 2 kids, think about that and stop the crap.
Well, I'll tell you one thing, Mr. Maraska. We are definitely hoping for normalcy. We are definitely hoping to see everybody back involved in the game, whether it's reporters, players, management, even owners, and we cannot wait for that day. But until then, we cannot wait to talk each and every week about all of the latest happenings in the world of Major League Baseball. And that's our own Rob Maraska, as I am the host of the Sports Report. The Reverend Tom Brice. And for more information on the Sports Report, you can go to sportsreportx.com and listen to all of our archives with myself and Mr. Maraska. You can go to soundcloud.com/the sportsreport2019. Check us out on YouTube. The Sports Report, the #1 global sports show. Our YouTube page is up and running. We have some videos there of content from prior shows, and you can definitely check them out anytime, anywhere. So looking forward to everybody doing that. And there's always a huge shout out to the entire team here at Sportanarium, and that includes Lakey, Arv, Danny, Sean, Dale, Steve, everybody at Sportanarium that has made us the #1 global sports show. And for more information on Sportanarium, you can go to www.sportanarium.com, where you can catch us now Fridays, 5 to 7 Eastern Time, 10 to 12 UK time. Saturdays, 5 to 7 Eastern Time, 10 to 12 UK time. And Sundays, the news report comes back 5 to 7 Eastern Time, 10 to 12 UK time. And you can always check us out at www.sportanarium.com. That's Fridays through Sundays, 5 to 7, 10 to 12 UK time. And most importantly, you can follow Sportanarium on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, where Sportanarium has over 47,000 subscribers. And you can now catch the Sports Report on the Sportanarium YouTube page. It is a tremendous honor. And last Friday's show is now up on the Sportanarium YouTube page. So everybody can follow Sportanarium on YouTube and subscribe there, where you can check us out and check out all the other great content on Sportanarium, including Sasha Jones and Dale and Sean and Blakey and Obbs, the Spartans boxing show, among many other great on Sportanarium. You can also like Sportanarium on Facebook at Sportanarium Media. And also a huge shout out to the legendary Joe Dell of Sleepy Hollow and Spectrum Green, where you can always hear music from him each and every week on the show. From Fridays to Sundays, we get great music from Spectrum Green and Sleepy Hollow. You can go to joe-dell.com for all of your virtual keyboard and piano lessons from the best in the business. And take it from us, Joe Dell definitely knows a thing or two about playing the keyboard and the piano. You can go to sleepyhollowband.com also for all content from the band and the many great songs that we play here on the Sports Report. So I want to make sure we acknowledge Joe Dell for all his contributions to the Sports Report and the News Report. And we are here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, with our longest tenured analyst. And that's our own Rob Maraska, talking all the latest happenings in the world of Major League Baseball. And Mr. Maraska, there was also some news off the field, which in a way impacted the Mets, because Met hero and then later on Met killer Daniel Murphy surprisingly announced his retirement last Friday at the age of 35. He had a 13-year career and is probably most notably known for his 2015 team with the Mets. And he helped us get into the World Series. And then he had 2 huge MVP-like years with the Nationals. And I feel like Mr. Maraska, he was about 800 with like 14 home runs and like 30 RBIs in his overall career against the Mets. But former All-Star and playoff hero Daniel Murphy is retired after 13 years. And Mr. Maraska, your thoughts on Daniel Murphy announcing his retirement?
Well, that kind of caught me by surprise. I mean, when he didn't sign with anyone after December, it did catch me by surprise. Daniel Murphy, you know what? I love Daniel Murphy as a ball player. 2015 was just an amazing playoff run for him. I mean, 7 home runs against the Dodgers and the Cubs, 2 against Kershaw, 1 against Greinke, 1 against Jake Arrieta, 1 against Kyle Hendricks, 1 against John Lester, 1 against Fernando Rodney. And I was there for the Citi Field home runs. And I'll tell you, playoffs were great that year. He was the National League Championship Series MVP. He brought the Mets to the World Series, and I'll tell you, it was just exciting. And then, of course, what do the New York Mets do? What do the Wilpons do? The following year, they do not sign. Okay. And you know what? He was the kind of ball player that we liked on the team. We loved on the team. He was a scrappy ball player. He loved playing for the Mets. And of course, the Mets reward him by letting him sign with the Washington Nationals, their rivals. What happens when he joins the Nationals? He starts killing the Mets. I mean, it seemed like every time he was up against the Mets, he hit a home run. It was so frustrating, and it was just horrible.
It reminds me very similar to when the Mets let go Ray Knight after the 1986 season. And Ray Knight's numbers didn't jump out at you, but in terms of what he meant to the 86 Mets, the Mets were never the same after that. In a lot of ways, I kind of think Murphy meant the same as to what Knight meant to the 86 Mets, because if you think about Daniel Murphy and what he contributed, especially in that postseason, especially in those first 2 series against the Dodgers and the Cubs, I mean, I don't know if he ever got out in the Cubs series. I mean, I lost count. If I'm not mistaken, I think he had 7 home runs in the first 2 series in that year. I mean, he just just could not get out. He was the only guy I felt in the Dodgers series that even hit for us on a consistent basis. So I think in a lot of ways that move hurt Met fans, and I think it hurt morale more than anything else with that team. And sure, they got back into the postseason in 2016, but they were missing something with Murphy. Murphy was the kind of guy I think that was the definition of what the Met lineup should have been. And he was a guy who was very versatile. I mean, he was just a good hitter. I mean, he wasn't a Hall of Famer, but he was one of those guys that you always wanted up at bat in a clutch spot, a clutch moment. He could work the count. He could get on base. He didn't strike out often. I mean, if you look at Murphy's career as a whole, he was just a prototypical hitter, a nice 290, 295 guy you could count on and was reliable. And Mr. Moroska, I felt in a lot of ways that the Mets were never the same after Daniel Murphy left via free agency.
And they weren't. And remember, in the postseason in 2015, he hit a home run in 6 straight games. I mean, 6 straight games. It was just unbelievable. Everybody was going wild. And you know what? It's just another time when the Mets and the Wilpons cheap out. And that's all it was. They didn't want to pay him, and Washington paid him. And look what happened. He was a 3-time All-Star, once with the Mets, 2 with the Nationals. Mets should have never let him go. And you're right. I like that comparison to Ray Knight, because that's exactly the same thing. Ray Knight did not want to leave the Mets after the 86 season. He was the MVP in the World Series. And how did the Mets reward him then? They let him go. So that was another time. And you're right. He was like Ray Knight. Ray Knight was tough, man. Let me tell you, that 86 season, he got into a couple of fights. Eric Davis, I mean, he really knocked Eric Davis, man. He really had a great fight against him, and it was exciting. The emotion, the World Series, and then the Mets let him go. The Mets let Murphy go. That's the rewards that these players got from the Wilpons.
Yeah, because no question that he blossoms into one of the most feared hitters for a couple of years in the National League. I mean, so looking at it even from the Mets vantage point, I mean, do you think that they thought, okay, he's going to hit 347 the next year, he's going to slug close to 600, knock in over 100 runs, lead the National League in doubles? I mean, did they just think, all right, well, he's going to be 30, he's now into his 30s, he's entering past his prime. Maybe the second half of the season was an aberration, because if you remember, he struggled a little bit the first half of that year, and then he came on the minute Cespedes got to the team, and he became that player that we were kind of looking for. And you think maybe that was that, where maybe they kind of felt, okay, well, you know what? Murphy was a good hitter for us, but we think his best days might be behind him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that came into it also. And the fact that the Wilpons were cheap, and the Wilpons, it's not only that they were cheap, it's they didn't know how to spend their money a lot of times, okay? They didn't want to sign Mike Piazza. Nelson Doubleday's the only reason that got done. The Wilpons, I don't know. When Frank Cashin was running the Mets as GM, at least they had him. He knew what he was doing. The Wilpons, though, I don't think they knew anything about baseball, to tell you the truth.
They knew a lot about real estate. That they definitely knew about. Baseball decisions, I think a little bit questionable. But when it comes to Daniel Murphy's career, and there's been a lot of Met killers, I know, Mr. Moroska, and Justin Turner's another one that comes to mind, and Chipper Jones, obviously, and even Kevin Mitchell, after he left the Mets, I always felt like he was another guy that we should not have traded and let go. But there's been a number of Met killers. But in recent memory, in your opinion, is Daniel Murphy the most notable Met killer?
Yeah, I mean, because it happened so fast, and it was like almost every at-bat in 2016. Every time he got up, you were saying to yourself, is he going to hit another home run? And guess what? A lot of the times he did.
He definitely did. I mean, listen, you look at that year as a whole, though, I think nobody could get him out. 347 he hits that year, knocks in over 100 runs, and leads the National League in doubles. So there was no question that Daniel Murphy definitely was a Met killer, but a killer for all teams that were playing against the Washington Nationals. But let me ask you another question on Daniel Murphy's career, Mr. Moroska. In your opinion, will the Mets recognize the career of Daniel Murphy's?
Well, now we have new ownership, so things I think are going to change. I don't know if they're going to, retire his number. I doubt that. Will he get into the Mets Hall of Fame? I don't know. But, when they recognize that team from 2015, he'll definitely be there and be recognized recognized. That's how I feel. This is new ownership, and they're going to definitely recognize their history and their past, unlike the Wilpons did.
No question that the 2015 team should definitely be recognized. And I don't think Daniel Murphy's a Mets Hall of Famer, but I think he's one of those guys that you definitely got to acknowledge, and for his contributions, especially for the 2015 season. And congratulations to Daniel Murphy on a great career. 296 lifetime hitter, 3-time All-Star, led the National League in doubles, 2015 National League Championship Series MVP. It was one of the greatest postseasons and one of the greatest series I think one player ever had in the postseason. It's very comparable to the one that Will Clark had, ironically, also against the Chicago Cubs. And of course, Will Clark played with a guy named Bill Baith, who was on the show a few weeks ago. We're going to hear from once again and talk about Will Clark and the rest of that 89 Giants team again with Bill. And that's what came to mind, I think, in comparison to Murphy's postseason, especially that NLCS series against the Cubs, was the 89 Will Clark series, where I think that Will Clark had about the same batting average and about as many home runs. But obviously, congratulations to Daniel Murphy. And we're looking forward to him being recognized as a Met, and of course, played parts of 8 seasons as a Met, and at 288 as a Met, was an All-Star in 2014. And Mr. Maraska, before we get your closing thoughts here, very quickly, there was some sad news once again in the world of Major League Baseball, and that's former Yankee and former All-Star Grant Jackson passed away here. And Grant Jackson had a long career, also pitched for the Orioles, for the world champion Pirates, a very durable pitcher, a very versatile pitcher, but he is no longer with us as he's passed away. And any thoughts here for our worldwide audience on Sportanarium when it comes to the career of Grant Jackson?
Oh, sad news once again. Like you said, he pitched a long time, decent pitcher. I remember he pitched for the 76 Yankees and, like you said, the world champions Pittsburgh Pirates. He was a decent pitcher, and he lasted a long time in the major leagues. I remember him a little with the Yankees, like I said, and I do remember him pitching for the Pirates because he pitched against the Mets a couple of times. So, sad news once again, another death in baseball.
No question about it, and very sad news, and our condolences to every baseball fan and the family of Grant Jackson, all fans. And he was 6-0, ironically, for the Yankees in 76, and a big part of the Yankees down the stretch getting into the World Series for the first time in many, many years. And he was also a big part of the 79 world champion Pirates. Again, a good pitcher. It wasn't a name that probably most sports fans will remember, but if you look at his career closely, it's a pretty good career. It's a really good career. Pitched a long time, also pitched for the Expos when they got to the postseason in 81, and was with the Pirates again in 82 where he ended his career. So guy was part of a lot of ball clubs. He was a good player. He was an important part as a setup man. He was a closer at times. I mean, he had a lot of different roles, was a starter with the Phillies. So we definitely want to extend our condolences and thoughts and prayers to everybody impacted by the loss of Grant Jackson, as yet again another player has passed away, too many of them since in the last year, and he's 86-75 in his career with a 3.46 ERA and 692 games appeared, including 79 saves. So again, versatile guy, had a long career, but we definitely extend our thoughts and prayers to everybody impacted by the loss of former World Series champion Grant Jackson, who passes away once again at the age of 78. And for you, my friend, I want to give you the floor. I want to give any closing thoughts. As always, plug where listeners can get in touch with you, and I cannot thank you enough for all that you do for us, as you're an integral reason as to why we're the #1 global sports show. So you know the drill, my friend. Plug a listener to get in touch with you, and the floor is yours.
Get in touch with me at Maraska on Twitter. I'll follow you if you follow me. And I just have to say, everyone out there should check out Sportanarium's YouTube page. Like it, subscribe. I love it. I've been on it, checking everything out, and it's really, really an excellent page and YouTube channel. So go check that out. You can listen to us and all the great shows on Sportanarium. It's great.
Absolutely. And want to extend once again all of our support and friendship to everybody at Sportanarium, again, including Lakey, Arv, Danny, Dale, Sean, Steve, Chris, Sasha, everybody at Sportanarium. So many great shows. You can even listen to some great music like Dale, and Sasha has the tennis show, and Sean has the 90s mix. I mean, there is a lot to offer, a lot to listen to. And Arv and Lakey just had a huge interview with a fighter that just beat Roy Jones Jr. So if you want to talk about how far that this station has come in such a short amount of time, that is due in part to everybody's leadership, and we're extremely excited to be a part of Sportanarium. And also a huge shout out to everybody on your end of it who's been supporting us, like Laura Delamast and Rosalie and Alyssa O'Toole and your father Vic and everybody else who's continued to make us the #1 global sports show and who's been with us since nearly the very beginning. So for you, my friend, I cannot thank you enough, and looking forward to speaking with you next week.
Talk to you next week.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show with our longest tenured analyst, and that's our own Rob Maraska, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice, and stay tuned for more hard-hitting analysis here on Sportanarium on the Sports Report with some new music once again from the legendary Joe Dell. Definitely stay tuned for that, along with the rest of the great content here on Sportanarium, as we are here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice, and stay tuned for some brand new music from the legendary Joe Dell as we're here on Sportanarium, the #1 global radio station. As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show with our #1 NFL analyst, and he's one of the greatest players in McGill Redbirds history, where he was a 3-time Canadian National Baseball champion, and he was a star this year for our 2020 ABA St. Louis Cardinals Division champions, our L.I. Brew Crew. And back by popular demand here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, the legendary Googs, Jake Guggenheimer. My friend, how are you?
What's up, Tommy B? It's been a week hiatus, but we're back, and I'm looking forward to talking about the biggest game of the year. How are you doing? I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying safe, and just hope everything's going well on your end as well.
Always good to talk with you, my friend, here on Sportanarium, the #1 global radio station, and I couldn't think of a better way to end the football season than by talking with our #1 NFL analyst, the legendary Jake Guggenheimer, here, and get his thoughts and his hard-hitting analysis on where we are today. And Jake, I want to get your thoughts then on the Chiefs and Bucs and how we got here in terms of why the Chiefs are in back-to-back Super Bowls, and the Bucs are playing in their second Super Bowl, and again have pulled off a rare feat, winning 3 road playoff games as a wild card, a number 5 seed. This happens very rarely in NFL history, so it's definitely a first in a lot of games here, and obviously the Bucs also are the first team in NFL history, although I say it's with an asterisk, but to actually host the Super Bowl as the home team. But Jake, how did we get here between the Chiefs and the Bucs in this year's Super Bowl?
We got here the 2020 season and the ability of the NFL to put on all 265 plus every single playoff game to date is kind of commendable on their part. I don't think anyone really thought we would have been here a year ago. So, really happy that we're here, really happy that this is the case. So, in terms of the past for each of the teams, the Bucs went 11-5 in the regular season. They made it in as a wild card team. They went into Washington. They beat a tough Washington team in Washington. Taylor Heineke started that game at quarterback, but played his butt off and won that game. Then they moved on to New Orleans, and a nice battle between old friends and good colleagues, Drew Brees and Tom Brady. Unfortunately, that was Drew Brees' last game, apparently it looks like, in the NFL, but Tom Brady was able to get the best of him yet again. And then Tom Brady marches into Lambeau Field against Aaron Rodgers, presumed NFL MVP, and the Packers, and beats them 31-26 2 weeks ago in Green Bay, when I really did not think that was going to be the case. But I guess you can never really count out old man Tom Brady in playoff games. And I really feel press saying old man because he's playing like he's, spry and 25, 26 again. I mean, he looks like as good as new. He looks like he's having a good time playing out there. He looks like he's really enjoying himself. It's fun to watch. So that was the path to this spot for the Buccaneers. In terms of the Chiefs, most dominant team in the NFL in the regular season, they went 14-2. Patrick Mahomes put on a great display again. A lot of people could say he should win NFL MVP every year because he's just so valuable to that Chiefs team, but they got that first round bye.
So Kansas City, obviously, as we talked about, beat Buffalo in a championship game, and Kansas City beat the Cleveland Browns, a team that we had talked about quite a bit here in the show, Jake.
Right.
First road playoff win in many, many years. We're going back since the beginnings of the early AFL-NFL mergers. So the Chiefs and Browns was a game that was a bit unexpected. It was a game where Mahomes got hurt, and there's no question it's a Chiefs team that was expected to be here. The Bucs, they certainly had a different path compared to the Chiefs, winning 3 road playoff games, especially winning those 2 games, as you mentioned, mentioned, in New Orleans and in Green Bay. And Aaron Rodgers, interesting stat, 1-5 in championship games in his career. I mean, we talk about Aaron Rodgers as one of the elites, but you definitely wouldn't expect him to be 1-5 in championship games. But Jake, let me ask you this question before we get into the game here a little bit. And these two teams faced off in late November. Kansas City came out with a win here in Tampa. Does that game bear anything into this matchup, or is it a game where you look at it and say it was over 2 months ago? These are two different teams and throw it out the window. What's your thoughts on that?
You know, Tom, I think this Buccaneers team is a much different team than they were when they played Kansas City that first time. Even so, that was a close game, and it was only really decided by a field goal. But I really think that Tampa Bay is coming to their own over the last couple of weeks, especially in the playoffs. I mean, they're clicking on all cylinders right now. They're fully healthy. They've got a plethora of weapons on the offensive end. I think it's a much different team, so I wouldn't take too much stock in regards to that game, predicting the outcome of this one. So, while it definitely, is something to keep in mind and say that Kansas City has definitely had the one-up this season so far, I don't think that it necessarily is an end-all, be-all, or be-all, end-all for the decision of this game.
Well, we'll certainly see what happens. It was a 27-24 outcome that the Chiefs had won it in Tampa late November, so we can only hope it's as good a game here. But getting to the big game here this Sunday, and we've made it here this far, and we've talked a little bit about the Chiefs. We've talked a little bit about the Bucs here in terms of how they got here. But let's go, Jake, with the Chiefs first on a couple of keys you think here in order for the Chiefs to come out on top and become only the 9th team in NFL history to repeat as Super Bowl champions.
Yeah, Tom, I think some of the keys for the Chiefs and the big glaring one is Patrick Mahomes fully healthy? I mean, he took that nasty kind of neck bender, I guess it was. He got kind of crawled up like that in the Cleveland game, but he came out the week after that and played pretty well. But, concussions and, head stuff is not something to ever mess with. And even though he played okay. He led them to a win. He's still fully healthy. Is he going to come out there and be Patrick Mahomes we all know and love? That rocket arm, that versatility, that ability to, make plays that seemingly have no business being made. So that's definitely one of them. The other key I see on the offensive end is Hill and Kelsey. I mean, that's as dynamic of a duo as you have in the NFL. Those two are electric when it comes to receiving the football. Kelsey set the all-time single-season tight end receiving yards record this year, and Hill was like 3rd or 4th in the league in receiving yards and 1st in touchdown, 15. Yep. This is a team with weapons as well. We can talk a lot about Tampa Bay and who they have on the offensive end, but geez, I mean, Chiefs got one of the best offenses in the league. They've got Eric Bieniemy running that, who most definitely should have got a head coaching position, but that's a conversation for another day. And he's running that offense with Andy Reid, and they're clicking on all cylinders right now. So how effective are those two going to be against a really stout, really good Tampa Bay secondary and linebacking core for that matter with regards to Kelsey? So that's definitely key number 2. And key number 3 is going to be the Chiefs secondary being able to contain the weapons on Tampa Bay's end. Between Mike Evans, Bob Gronkowski, Chris Godwin, Cameron Brate, even throw in there Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson, who are 2 lesser-known receivers on that team, and then mix in the running back duo of Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones, you've got a really strong offense right there. So how is that secondary and that defense going to be able to contain those weapons? If they're able to shut down those weapons and not let Tom Brady get comfortable, I think it's going to be a pretty easy game for the Chiefs come Sunday.
No question that the Chiefs on the offensive side of the ball have an advantage over Tampa Bay. But on the defensive side of the ball, you might want to give Tampa Bay the edge here, Jake. And then leading into it then, on the other side, for the NFC champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who only the 2nd time in franchise history have appeared here in the Super Bowl. An interesting stat here, Jake, that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this year won more road playoff games than they ever won before this entire year. So they won 3 road playoff games, and they didn't even win that many before this past year. And Tom Brady will have won more playoff games than any Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback in the team's history. So put that into perspective. A lot of first here with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So looking at it on the Bucs side of the ball, Jake, what are some keys for Tampa Bay in order for them to come out with the W and win the 2nd Super Bowl in franchise history?
I mean, like you're saying, Tom, that's the Tom Brady effect for you. I mean, he's incredible, my guy. He's just so good at what he does. I mean, it's kind of crazy. But, keys keys for the Buccaneers are going to be the pass rush. We talk about the defense and how good they are. How much pressure are they going to be able to get on Patrick Mahomes? How much are they going to force him out of the pocket, roll out to his right and left, and make throws on the run? We all know he can do it. But if Patrick Mahomes gets comfortable and is able to sit in that pocket, it's game over. So how are we going to see the Tampa Bay pass rush? How are we going to see Todd Bowles dial it up against that Kansas City offensive line, make Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable? The second key that I see for Tampa Bay is going to be establish the run, pound the ball, tire out the Chiefs defense, hold the ball as long as possible. Don't let that quick hitting Chiefs offense onto the field as long as possible. We want to keep that offense off the field if they're going to win that game, and we're going to need to run the football. That's key number 2. The third key, and probably the biggest one, is going to be Tom Brady. And I think that's easily said. It's probably one of the most obvious things that I could have said. But Tom Brady, you're going into your 10th Super Bowl now. Is there a little bit of fatigue? Is it tough because you are a wild card team? You're not used to playing 4 playoff games. Maybe you're used to only playing those 3. Is he going to come with that same energy? I'm pretty sure that's a rhetorical question. We all know Tom Brady turns it up this time. But it's something interesting to take a look at. Tom Brady is going to be the key to this game. If he plays a good game, maintains the football, doesn't turn it over, he'll be fine. The problem against Philadelphia when they lost the Super Bowl was that he turned the ball over. The problem against the Giants in those 2 Super Bowls they lost was he turned the ball over. He gave the offense a chance to score. So Tom Brady protecting the football, Tom Brady keeping his offense on the field with the run game, and that pass rush containing Patrick Mahomes are the 3 keys I see for Tampa Bay.
You said something interesting, Jake, and I want to go back to it because we had talked about this on yesterday's show and last week with the teammate on the LI Brew Crew, the Brute Force, Brad Weiser. He talked about Tom Brady, and this is his 10th Super Bowl. Now, we had asked the Brute Force who he thought there was more pressure on, Mahomes or Brady. And initially, I had agreed with the Brute Force. I kind of thought Patrick Mahomes had more pressure. But after you saying something that was very interesting here, this is his 10th Super Bowl and a fatigue factor and being here all these different times. And then he has lost the 3 games, twice against the Giants, 1 against the Eagles. I initially thought, Jake, maybe there was more pressure on Patrick Mahomes because he has to now beat Brady in the postseason. And we all remember a couple of years ago in the AFC Championship game. So then, Jake, I got to ask you then, who do you think then has more pressure on them to win this game? Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes?
I think Brady has something to prove here. I mean, look, the guy's done everything in his NFL career. I mean, he's absolutely tore up record books. He's the most winningest quarterback in NFL history. He's got the most touchdown passes. He's closing in on the passing yards record. He will go down in history as the single best quarterback in NFL history, probably until Patrick Mahomes passes him at a point. But I think there's a lot of pressure on Brady here. I think, if he can win this Super Bowl with Tampa Bay, nobody is going to question his status as the greatest of all time. I mean, not many people do to begin with, but you take a Tampa Bay team that hasn't been to the Super Bowl since 2002, that hadn't been to the playoffs since 2007, that endured a losing season last year with a quarterback who turned the ball over 30 times, and you come in, all you do is go 11-5, win 4 playoff games, pretty much 3 road games, and then, a neutral site, in quotations, a neutral site game. He's put a stamp on probably one of the best seasons over 40, one of the best seasons of all time as a quarterback. I think there's pressure on Brady to win this game. Look, if he loses, is anyone going to look at him and be like, wow, he should have won that game? No, because he's playing the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. But if he wants to hold on to the torch just a little bit longer and play until he's 45, like he says he wants to do, I think there's pressure on this game. Look, if he comes out and he plays terribly, the narrative is going to come out that he's washed. That's going to happen. It's just a fact. That's what people like to do, especially the Skip Baylesses of the world who like to spew all this BS on Twitter and say stuff on their shows. And I think there is pressure on Brady. I don't know if it's necessarily more than Mahomes, but I think there is pressure on Brady to win this game. I think Patrick Mahomes could lose this game and say, I'm probably going to go to 5 or 6 more of these. It's really not that big of a deal. But I think Brady, he's coming down to the end. How many more of these does he have? I mean, people have been saying this for year after year, but really how many more of these opportunities he's going to have? I think there's pressure on Brady to win this game.
We've been hearing this about Tom Brady since going back when the Giants beat the Patriots the second time in 2012. I mean, so you think about it, in how many times has Tom Brady been in this spot and we say this is the last one, and it's really impressive, to say the least, on what he's done in his career. I mean, 43 years old. And put that into perspective, there's very few athletes across any professional sport that have had the success and had the kind of career that Tom Brady has. And, Jake, initially, I had thought it would be Patrick Mahomes because he has to prove something. He's lost to Brady in the playoffs a couple years ago with the Chiefs. We saw Russell Wilson in this instance get to back-to-back Super Bowls, and the Seahawks haven't been back since. But I think now, in a way, it's Tom Brady who has more pressure on him because this is the 10th one, and it very well could be the last one. And let's say he has a bad game, and it looks frowned upon, the performance that he has, and then he puts himself in a position where he goes, let's say 14 for 29, or God forbid, with 167 yards and 3 turnovers. And you say to yourself, well, you know what? I don't know if Brady should be playing much longer. So I think the pressure might be on the Bucs and Brady because the Bucs, as you pointed out, they haven't been to the postseason since 2007. And the last time they won the Super Bowl, which I remember, was 2002. So this is a franchise that hasn't been to the postseason often. It has not been here in this spot. Whereas the Chiefs, as a franchise, have had more success. They've had more winning seasons. They've been a playoff team many more times. So the likelihood of them getting here is much greater than the Bucs and Brady. So I think, Jake, we're in agreement. I think we'll definitely see what happens. And that's why we're looking forward to talking more about this game and all of the latest happenings in the world of the NFL with our number one NFL analyst, and that's Googs, Jake Guggenheimer of our LI Brew Crew. As I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice. And for more information on the Sports Report, you can go to sportsreportx.com and listen to all of our archives. You can go to soundcloud.com/the Sports Report 2019. And you can now check us out on YouTube. The Sports Report, the number one global sports show, is our YouTube page, so definitely subscribe. And as always, a huge shout out to the entire team here at Sportanarium, including Lakey, Arv, Danny, Dale, Sean, Steve, Chris, Susie, Sasha, everybody at Sportanarium that has made us the number one global sports show. And of course, you can check us out Fridays, 5 to 7, 10 to 12 UK time. Saturdays, 5 to 7, 10 to 12 UK time. And the news report comes back 5 to 7 Eastern time, 10 to 12 UK time. And you can do that at www.sportanarium.com. And you can also like Sportanarium on Facebook at Sportanarium Media. You can also follow Sportanarium on Twitter and Instagram at Sportanarium. And now you can subscribe to Sportanarium on YouTube at Sportanarium, where you can find the Sports Report now. And it's over 47,000 subscribers. So a huge honor. Could not be more grateful and thankful to be on Sportanarium's YouTube page with over 47,000 subscribers. And last week's show, where we had Carly Thumper Skelly fighting for the Commonwealth Super Bantamweight title February 20th on Sky Sports against Amy Timlin in a rematch of the draw, the very controversial draw on October the 31st of last year. So we're extremely excited to be on Sportanarium and getting to hear great content with everybody else on the show, including the Spartans boxing show, Sasha and Chris, everybody on Sportanarium that we get to hear all the time. So extremely honored about that. And that's why we're here on the Sports Report, the number one global sports show, talking all things related to Super Bowl 55 with our number one NFL analyst, the legendary Jake Guggenheimer, of course, the 3-time Canadian National Baseball Champion, with our McGill Redbirds, and also of our LI Brew Crew, which you can also follow on Instagram at LI Brew Crew to find out all the latest happenings with the Brew Crew as they're getting ready for the season. It was just like yesterday, Jake. You guys won the ABA St. Louis Cardinals Division Championship, and now we're not too far away from the season, but we are still in season with the NFL, and we're recapping the big game here between the Bucs and Chiefs, and who do we think comes out on top here. And Jake, after talking about some of the keys for the Chiefs, some of the keys for the Bucs, and talking about a couple of other different factors here in this game, I got to put you on the spot here for our worldwide audience here on Sportanarium. Chiefs, Bucs, who do you think comes out with the W? And even for a bonus, I'll ask you over under, and who do you think covers the spread?
All right, so I've done a lot of thinking about this one. I've done my research. I've followed my heart in situations. I'm thinking too much. I don't know, Tom. But honestly, at the end of the day, it comes down to who's the more talented team on both sides of the ball, and who do I think can win this football game. And it boils down to that. It's a football game. Who's going to win this football game? And after, thinking about this, doing my research, looking at how Mahomes has played in big games like this, Brady played in big games like this, I think the Chiefs are going to win this game and repeat as Super Bowl champions. And I'll tell you why. First off, that offense is deadly. There's no more words for it. They've got the best 1-2 punch in the league. They've got a dynamic rookie running back. They've got Patrick Mahomes. And they've got a pretty good offensive line for that matter. Second, I think that Steve Spagnuolo likes to dial it up in big games. We know when he was the defensive coordinator for the Giants that he blitzed the crap out of Tom Brady in 2 Super Bowls with Justin Tuck, Osi Umenyiora, Jason Pierre-Paul. Funny, Jason Pierre-Paul is actually now playing on the other side. However, I still think Steve Spagnuolo comes up and develops a game plan to win this game. And third, I think their secondary is going to be good enough that they will force Tom Brady into mistakes. And for those 3 reasons, I believe that the Chiefs are going to win this game.
I think you got to look at it here in terms of who has possession and who has the ball more. Is that going to be another factor to keep an eye on here in terms of time of possession and who turns the ball over less?
Exactly. I think that's definitely a factor, and that's why I said one of the keys for the Bucs is going to be that running game. As long as they can keep Patrick Mahomes off the field, is going to be in their benefit. So I definitely think time of possession is going to be a factor. Whoever holds the ball last is probably going to win this game.
Well, Jake, before we get your closing thoughts here, I'm going to go on a limb here because I haven't actually picked in this game the Chiefs and Bucs. I know that myself and the Brute Force have talked about it. We talked about it with New York Mets prospect Marcel Renneria. And I know the Brute Force, he made his pick on yesterday's show. And obviously he likes the Kansas City Chiefs. And clearly he had a conference call with you. There was clearly some type of Brew Crew chat about this. But I'm going to go on a limb here only because our own Craig Holman, the legendary Philadelphia Phillies star, had said that he had liked the Tampa Bay Bucs. And he had pointed out that he liked the Bucs just because of the defense. And I kind of think defense wins championships still. And he had thought that the Tampa defense had the edge. So I'm going to go pick Tampa here. I'm going to pick them because I like the fact that they're at home. Their defense has played well. They're battle-tested. They've won some games here. And it's hard to go against Tom Brady. It's like going against Michael Jordan. It's like going against LeBron. It's like going against Sidney Crosby in the NHL. There's just something about going against these guys until they've been beaten badly in these spots. And Brady, the 3 games he lost in the Super Bowl, it wasn't his fault. He played very well in those games. I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to go Tampa. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be a great game. But for me, frankly, I'd be happy with whoever wins the game because we're going to have fans, Jake. We're going to have fans at this game. That's what I'm very happy about because it's been very difficult to be able to watch these games with very few fans in them. But it's going to be a great game. We're looking forward to talking about it a little bit next week with you and get into some NHL talk as well. And very happy to have you back on the show here as we kick off our 2-year anniversary and continue to celebrate all the great things that we've done. And shout out also once again to New York Mets prospect Marcel Renneria, who picked in the game, and Craig Holman, of course, who spent a long career in the Philadelphia Phillies organization at Jacksonville State University Hall of Famer. And his son Luke is now doing phenomenal things, and we're very excited about the future for him. But for you, my friend, I want to give you the floor. I want to give you any closing thoughts. As always, plug where our listeners can get in touch with you. And I cannot thank you enough for all that you do for us, as you're an integral reason as to why we're the #1 global sports show. So you know the drill, my friend. Plug where listeners get in touch with you, and the floor is yours.
Instagram at JGuggenheimer11, Twitter at JMGuggen. Please do follow me. I'm more than happy to talk sports anytime with anybody. Brad and I actually did have a conversation about this. He shot me a message on Instagram. We actually did talk about it, but I think his pick was his own. I just kind of helped him reinforce it. So I'm looking forward to this game. I think it's going to be really fun. I'm really looking forward to this Super Bowl Sunday. Something fun to look forward to. It's been a tough year, everybody, and let's just rejoice on a all-American holiday, Super Bowl Sunday. But realistically, I think whoever wins this game, it's going to be a pleasure to watch. I think it's going to be a close, tight-knit game. You asked me before who covers the spread and the over-under. I really do think that Bucs are going to cover the spread because it's 3.5, and I believe this game is going to end in a field goal. But I really wouldn't be surprised if it ended by a touchdown either way. But I'm going to pick the Bucs to cover, even though I'm taking the Chiefs to win. And I actually like this game to be a little bit lower scoring than people are expecting. So I think the over-under line is like 56. Yep. So I'm going to take the under there. I like it like 27-24, 51, around that range. But, if you can get the line at anything else, please, feel free and keep a lookout for those props. I don't know, tails has been the coin toss the last 5 years. So I think I might, bet on that. And then always the really fun one is the Gatorade color. So, throw some money on purple or something. I don't know. You heard it here first. It's going to be purple this year. Purple Gatorade.
Jake, you sound like Craig Holman because Craig was talking with us a little while ago, and he was actually saying the same thing as you. He likes the under, and he said that the over's too high with 56. He said it's going to be a game in the 40s, and he thinks it's going to be a battle of defenses. He thinks that last year's Super Bowl and the last couple Super Bowls have been tight defensive matchups, and that's why he's picking the under. under, and he's a pretty big better himself. So it sounds like maybe you and Craig Holman had a conversation. Maybe you guys were swapping stories, you being a catcher and being a pitcher. Who knows? Maybe you guys had a conversation on the mound. I mean, that's what it sounds like. But obviously, it's going to be a great game. Definitely looking forward to it. Looking forward to the commercials, and not surprised that you and the Brew Force had a conversation, and you kind of prodded the Brew Force in a bit of a direction to kind of help him pick. And a huge shout out as always to him and the rest of the Brew crew. And cannot thank you enough, my friend. And looking forward to speaking with you next week and talking about the game overall next week, and also some NHL talk between the Rangers and Islanders and the rest of the league. And looking forward to speaking with you next week.
Thanks, Tommy. I'm really looking forward to it as well. Happy Super Bowl Sunday, everybody. Stay safe.
As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show with our #1 NFL analyst, and that's the legendary Googs, Jake Guggenheimer of our LI Brew crew. As I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice, and stay tuned for more hard-hitting analysis here on Sportanarium, the #1 global radio station. We're at www.sportanarium.com. As we're here on the Sports Report, the #1 global sports show, as I am the host of the Sports Report, the Reverend Tom Brice.